Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Inside the Birds pregame live here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook on Delaware Ave in Philadelphia, where Philly loves a winner. I'm Jeff Mosher from Inside the Birds, alongside my Inside the Birds co-host Adam Kaplan. Back as usual, the usual suspects. We've got tape breakdown guru Greg Cosell. What's up, Greg?
Jeff, what's going on?
Liking the coat, liking the shirt.
Do you?
Very stylish.
David Donahue, I see that shirt.
A little bit. A little bit. And, of course, the man over there in the Eagles t-shirt and hat, former Eagles wide receiver Jason Avant. How you guys doing?
Doing well. Michigan's still on track. We'll see how they do goes.
No Michigan talk today. No Michigan.
Listen,
Looking forward to this game, my friend. This is a big. You don't usually see big games in Week 11, but I'm looking forward to this game today.
This is a big game, so we've got a lot to talk about. We are here at Jack's Bar and Grill, and I hope our friend Ron stops by with a few drinks a little bit later. We'll see.
Yeah,
We need that.
We will definitely need that. Now, the Eagles have not won a home game in almost a year, which is hard to believe. They are 0-4 this year and 0-5 going back to their last home game of last year. Everybody remembers that game. It was not good. However, the Eagles are 4-6. They're coming off their 30-13 win over the Broncos, and they're facing a very beat-up Saints team today that is 5-4, but that has dropped 2 straight games, both by 2 points. And there are some playoff implications here, as the Saints are currently in that second wild card spot. The Eagles currently 1 game out. There's a lot of football left to play. I don't like using the P word at this point, but it's out there.
But you did already.
I did, didn't I?
You did.
I guess I don't mind it too much.
No, you just went through a whole deal.
I just threw it out there, absolutely. Yeah. By the way, the standings. No, I'm just kidding.
If the season ended today.
You're right, exactly.
That's
Our
right.
favorite phrase.
Soon they'll start saying that after week 1.
That's right. By the way, everybody controls their own destiny.
Right, that way. Yeah.
Everybody but the Lions and the NFC can
right.
technically make the playoffs, which is kind of why it's funny to even use that word. But irregardless, come down here to Rivers Casino and Sportsbook, place a bet, watch the game. They've got these enormous TVs. You can come here and watch the show. Great food specials, wonderful leather seats to sit on, great drinks. Like I said, hopefully we'll be partaking in a little bit. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, please, you can leave us a comment or a question in the YouTube box. We'll try to get to it at some point during the show. And if you can, please give us a like or a share on whatever platform you're listening on or watching on. Let's start with the latest news. We had some big transaction news in Eagles world this week, as 2 members of their 2018 draft class became recent members to get contract extensions in back-to-back days. On Friday, it was tight end Dallas Goedert, and on Saturday, it was slot cornerback Avonte Maddox. That's 4 guys from that draft class when you count Jordan Mailata and Josh Sweat to have all gotten contract extensions this year. This is a 4-6 team, right? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. These are very good players who are on the team. And Adam, let's talk about it, because we were wondering during the preseason if this was going to happen. And then at various stages of the season, specifically with Goddard, there was a question about whether or not he was going to even be on the team and get this extension.
Yeah, so Jeff, I think if you go back to start of training camp early August, the Eagles were negotiating with Wentz's agents, and then they, I'm told, pulled out. They decided not to do it. Mm-hmm. They were going to wait.
Ertz's agent.
Yeah, part of it, we're talking about Goddard's agents, but then you had the Zach Ertz situation. Ertz was still in the roster.
Right.
And the Eagles felt they were probably going to wait to trade Ertz because they could not get what they were looking for. And as we know, it would take toward the trade deadline to get that done. When you go back to Goddard's situation, they also, with Goddard's injury history, they wanted to wait and see how he played. He's played well. That's not been the issue this season. The issue has been getting the football, but they see him as a three-down player. As one Eagles source said to me, we think of him as a building block player. Mm-hmm. So if you look at over a series of years, you project him, because it's, as Mike Tannenbaum told us on Inside the Birds TV, Jeff, this week, it's not about what they've done now, it's what you think they're going to do down the road. And that's why when you pay him $14.5 million per season, some people say, wow, is he really worth that money? When's he done it? Well, it's not what he's done now, it's what you think he's going to do. And if he does become one of the top 5 tight ends in the league, this contract could be a bargain. So that's why they did it now. We said this a couple months ago. Don't be surprised by Thanksgiving if they extend a couple more contracts, because they just want to see these guys do well. Mm-hmm. And instead of waiting to see what Goddard does, they got it done. Now they don't have to use that franchise tag on him, because he would have got tagged. You could mark this down. If they did not get a deal done by early February, he would have gotten tagged. That was what they were going to do with that tag. But now when you look at it, who else do they really need to extend? They're pretty much at the end of guys who they could extend here. Very few guys they would look to extend now. So it's a good job by their front office to get this done.
Right. Obviously, Miles Sanders is someone they could extend. We'll talk about him after the season as we go on. I want to ask you guys about Maddox. This is a predominantly zone team. He has played well this year, but we also noticed they were stocking up on the shorter, more physical zone type of or inside corners. Were you surprised to see Maddox get the bag right at this minute?
Surprised? No, I'm not surprised because of the organization and how much they like him. When you have a guy that you have drafted and you want him to succeed, you want him to be well, Howie's historically, if they're any good, that he's going to try to extend them or keep them on the roster. So I'm not surprised. But again, we haven't seen a bunch of man coverage from him. Right. And in the times we did see man coverage, he was very soft and allowing, very passive and allowing catches in front of him. So I think he's a good player and can develop into all of those things. But just like Dallas Goedert, the contract is not necessarily earned. It's projections that we're looking at. We're saying, okay, there's not a bunch of nickel corners in this league that are doing well, and Avonte could possibly be one of those in the future. And he has all of the ingredients to be good,
right? And
he can get better. So I think that's where they are.
I joked with a friend. It's kind of the nature of the fan, right? When things don't go well, I said, how many games? First, I said, how many years or months or games before any one of these contracts? And you're already seeing with Josh Sweat starts to get criticized, right? Because right now it is a lot of money, and you're right. These contracts are generally about what they think of you as a building block player and what you're going to do. But then when you don't go out and do it, for whatever reason, Josh Sweat only has 1.5 sacks. We can talk about the scheme.
Yeah.
We could say he's a good player.
True.
Some people only look at one number, though. Yeah. And all of a sudden, you see him getting paid just as much as a guy like Yannick Ngakoue.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait a minute, was that smart?
Right.
So that's why I kind of joked about a 4-6 team giving out 4 contract extensions. They also left them in a position where I don't know what they would have done if they did. Once they traded Zach Ertz, you have to extend Dallas Goedert, or else you're really bare in the tight end cupboard.
So here's my thing: when you have Darius Slay and you pay Avonte Maddox, you expect those guys to present challenges every week for an offense and to get in people's face and to force incompletions.
Yeah.
We haven't always seen that. And me watching the Saints tape this week, this defense does that a bunch, and the guys that they have paid are panning out because they can play any style of defense they want because they have guys that can cover people.
Right.
And we're still limited in our coverages, and we sometimes have to play around our corners, which is not always the best situation when you want to pay guys.
Right. One thing I'll point out, I think there's 2 things I'm going to make notice of. I still don't understand how the Eagles went into this year with Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert on the team. The idea was, well, I'm not trading Zach Ertz unless I get really good value. But you didn't get great value. You got a 5th-round pick and a fringe roster player. And in doing so, you went 5 or 6 weeks without Dallas Goedert being able to play 100% of the snaps. I'm not sure how that helped them at all, but that's the reality of the situation. The second thing is, I look at a team like the Steelers, a very good draft and develop team, right? They let a guy like Javon Hargrave go. You could say, well, was that a mistake because he's played so well for the Eagles? But I look at the Steelers' defense, and they're still really good this year. They've managed to survive. It doesn't feel like the Eagles are ever in a position where they can let someone go and feel good about replenishing them with the talent. I mean, if they didn't sign Josh Sweat to this extension, they already are pretty bare in the young pass rusher cupboard, to the point where I feel like it forced them to say, we need to keep this young, promising player, or not even let him go to the market, test the market first and see if we can bring him back at a better number. Because I guarantee you, real quick, if he did test the market this year, coming off the year that he's having right now, where you look and you don't see the sacks up, maybe you could have gotten him at a better deal. I don't know. I'm just saying, it just seems like the Eagles will always take this approach.
They extended Sweat much earlier, coming off last year, and he also had a good training camp in preseason. So you're thinking, okay, let's do this now. Because let's just say, for argument's sake, you let Josh Sweat walk. You didn't extend his contract. You've got Ryan Kerrigan on a 1-year deal, and you've got Derek Barnett on his last year of his deal. They have nobody. Right.
So they put themselves in that position where they felt like they had to.
Quite frankly, they're still going to have to address the position next year.
Definitely.
That cupboard's still bare. They need help at that position.
All right, let's get into this game. It's just a good discussion about the contract extensions and who deserves, who's not, and how teams look at it. It's not always, as you guys mentioned, not always what you've done. It's what they think you will do And if you don't go on do it, you wind up judging these things in a vacuum. So we'll see what happens down the road. As far as injuries are concerned, as we get into the injury report, the Eagles, again, getting healthier. Their opponent almost couldn't get any more injured than the Saints. And we'll talk about that right away. As the Saints are already without, listen to this is who they already didn't have because of either IR or PUP. Jameis Winston, Mike Thomas, Andrews Pete, their right guard, Will Lutz, their kicker, and of course, there's one other guy who's been out. Peyton Turner, their first-round draft pick.
Greg,
who's
you
been
like
out.
him, right?
I did like him coming out, yes.
Good pass rusher. On top of that, who will not play today are Alvin Kamara, Ryan Ramczyk, the right tackle, Teron Armstead, the left tackle, one of their kind of versatile weapons who could have been a fill-in for Kamara in Ty Montgomery. He's got a finger issue. And, of course, Taysom Hill's a little banged up, so it sounds like he's going to be either a game-time decision or if he plays, he may be impacted by his foot injury. Fellas, that is the Saints right there. The Saints that you thought going into the year might be a good team, they're all hurt. I mean, I don't know how you can get more injured.
They don't look like the same team because if you look at the team the Eagles beat last year, their offensive line was intact. The only difference was that they had Nick Easton playing guard. But other than that, those guys were there, and now you take out 3 of those guys, Ramczyk, Armstead, and Andrews Pete is out for the season.
Yeah.
And you're playing guys like James Hurst probably for the second straight week at left tackle. Probably
Calvin Throckmorton.
Throckmorton's also playing at guard, though, correct?
Yep.
And then
got to have a Throckmorton on your roster.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Hurst has been playing left tackle, Throckmorton left guard.
Right. And then when you look at it, they're going to make it the guy who's going to play right tackle, I believe it's going to be Jordan Mills, who you might remember as a starter years ago.
Yep.
He was with the Bears.
Yes, and then he kind of bounced around. Right,
yes.
The last game he started was 2 years ago for the Cardinals. They have nobody else. They're basically left with a cupboard bare here. So they got Landon Young, a 6th-rounder, but he hasn't played yet. So they've got challenges here. To me, there are no excuses today. The matchups, folks, favor the Eagles. They've got to find a way to win.
Yeah, certainly Eagles defense against this Saints offense, which is banged up.
Yeah.
Saints defense, which is very good, largely intact. They'll be out without Tano.
Passigno.
From
Villanova.
From Villanova, right.
Yep.
Former Chief. He's out with an ankle, but he's a backup player
Gardner
for them.
Johnson's out, too.
Yep, that's
Gardner. I mentioned him.
How do they
Chauncey
use him,
Gardner.
Greg, when he plays Chauncey Gardner-Johnson? How do they?
He's a slot player.
Corner? Slot player? Okay.
And very often, what they do, they did this more last year, not as much this year, but it's part of what they do, is they will play him essentially in their base defense as their Sam linebacker.
Yeah.
So even if they play against 12 personnel with 2 tight ends, he's essentially their Sam linebacker.
Right.
He's considered by a lot of football people as one of the better nickels just because of his versatility,
Wow.
being able to play a safety position, be in base defense and play nickel. So he's very respected. So missing him is
big one.
big.
Okay.
So really the only kind of critical player on the Saints defense that won't
Chauncey
be there
Gardner,
today,
yeah.
Chauncey
Yeah.
Gardner-Johnson, right.
Yeah.
As for the Eagles, Davion Taylor, the linebacker, questionable. Derek Barnett, questionable with a neck injury. Apparently that might have happened in practice, so we'll see. I mean,
That worries me.
that
The neck
yeah,
injury.
they're not deep on the defensive line.
He did
right
not
here.
work on Thursday. Friday, he's a game-time decision. He did practice Thursday. But when it comes to neck injuries, man, those worry me. Because if he doesn't play today, then now you're asking Ryan Kerrigan to play a lot of snaps.
All right.
Teron Jackson, who's a rookie, to play a lot of snaps. Their depth does not look good. Remember, without Brandon Graham, it becomes really difficult.
Absolutely. Good news, though. Miles Sanders expected back today.
He's definitely playing.
Active on the 53.
Yep.
We'll see what kind of role he plays. Also, Dallas Goedert, we anticipate will play. He had the concussion protocol.
Yep.
And anybody else on? No, I think that was pretty much for the offense. So obviously, as Adam mentioned, a big opportunity for the Eagles defense today against this banged up Saints offense. As far as protections, John Hightower, LaRaven Clark, and Brent Toth were protected on the practice squad. Not big news there. So again, if you're watching, please give us a like, give us a share, retweet. We do want to tell you about our friends at Deal Dash, and we always tell you we love winning championships, and I don't know if it's going to be the Eagles' year to win a championship, but somebody is going to win a championship this year in the NFL. Maybe it'll be the Chiefs, maybe it'll be the hated Cowboys, who knows, but guys like us and Jason Avant over there, we retired from the field a long, long time ago, but we're winning because we use
This guy did too.
Deal Dash. That's true.
You
The All-City
retired
New
from
York
the
City
field.
shortstop. He's retired too.
Yeah, see? And his jump shot, I think.
That's
also
right.
is retired.
But we are still winning because we use Deal Dash, the online shopping platform that's actually fun. Deal Dash is the longest running penny auction website and app around. Does that sound too good to be true? Of course. I mean, we've seen a car go for $900, a brand new TV for less than $2. So don't be a loser. Stop paying full retail price for things you want and get on Deal Dash. Either go to DealDash.com or download the Deal Dash app. And when you register, enter the promo code ITB for a special offer to get some bonus free bids at Deal Dash or DealDash.com. All right, let us get into this matchup, because the one thing the Eagles have been doing the last few weeks is running the ball better than anybody else in the NFL. They have stormed the scene here, bulldozing their way to 626 rushing yards since the start of Week 8. That is that's more than 150 yards more than the second-ranked New England Patriots in that span. You see the numbers there, and they're averaging 5.01 yards a carry, and they've got 6 rushing touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. And what I really think you have to admire about their rushing effort last week against the Broncos, 214 yards, was that it wasn't their typical go downhill, 12 personnel, 13 personnel under center. They went back to a shotgun attack. They've stretched them out, ran a lot of zones. And for an offense that was once criticized for looking too collegey at them, they kind of made a return to the shotgun look, but their run game stayed.
Yeah, and I think the reason why they did that is because if you do it one way and a team starts to get a beat on what you're doing. Now, did I expect them to be in shotgun almost every play? No. Their inside zones were really working well. It got to the second level. This is, we were laughing earlier in the season. We're like, why don't they run the football? It wasn't just to help Hurts. They can do this.
Right.
So it'll be fascinating to see today against the statistically better run defense, the best in the National Football League against the Saints. Can they get it done? And then, if they're not, what do? Do they stay with it, or do they start getting pass happy? That we'll get in today as the show progresses, but that's the fascinating tactical matchup, guys, is do they stay with the run if it's not working? Because they've stayed with it, and it's been incredibly good.
What do you think, Greg? What did you see differently last week against Denver than, say, the week before, and how they ran the ball?
Well, Hurts was under center twice until the final garbage time drive.
Right.
So the whole game was played in shotgun. It's funny, I was watching the tape, and I started to think, as I'm about halfway through, I thought they made this a Hurts game. It kind of reminded me of the way the Ravens play with Lamar Jackson. That was what their offense was, because Hurts then, in their mind, obviously, becomes a factor when he's in the gun as a runner. And there were a number of runs in which the outside defender got stuck. And he's an unblocked player. If you have a zone read element, he got stuck because you don't know whether he's going to crash. He doesn't know whether he's going to crash or whether he's going to stay outside.
Right.
And I remember that particularly on Howard's 25-yard run. I forget when that exactly happened in the game. I believe it was the second half. But basically, they made that a Hurts game. They put him in the gun, and they worked off of that. And we've been talking so much about him being under center, which is what they had done the last 2 weeks. But in this game, they went the exact opposite, and it was obviously effective against a pretty good defense.
Right.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if they're calling more call it and run it, even in the shotgun. Usually there's a read element of it, but I think that they have taken the percentage of passing down.
Yes.
Even when it comes to coaching Jalen Hurts, hey, if you're unsure about it, if it's 50-50, let the run ride, let it go. And so that's what I'm seeing. As I'm watching the tape, it seems like they've taken his option ability out of it sometimes. If it's anything 50-50, you give it to the running back and let the run, succeed.
No,
I'm sorry, that's what we never know, because I remember talking to Greg Roman a few years ago at the Maxwell Club dinner in Atlantic City.
OC of the Ravens.
Right, OC of the Ravens. And because when I was watching the Ravens, there were so many times where I thought that there was no real option, just based on looking at the tape, because everybody automatically says, oh, there's an option, just like you were saying. And he kind of hinted that, you're right. So I think a lot of these plays, there's not necessarily an option.
Sure.
They make it look like that. The structure of the play looks like that, and it impacts the defense, but it's not really an option.
And that would go back to Adam's point, and I think you guys have talked about it too, about good coaching, about seeing something that is working and making sure it goes the right way, as opposed to the first 5-6 weeks where you thought that they were trying to shoehorn one kind of offense that wasn't working, and now they're starting to make more changes. I think what's fascinating about the revival of their running game is that the two guys who are carrying them, we're talking about Jordan Howard, who was not even on the 53-man roster.
Doesn't mean he can't play.
No, of course not.
He looks good.
And Boston Scott, who was on the team, but he was basically collecting dust Like I think he only had 3 or 4 carries.
He actually never
the
had
whole season,
he had
right?
never touched from scrimmage
until the Sanders got hurt.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you predict that?
And you look now, these 2 guys over the last 3 weeks. I mean, Jordan Howard's the NFL's 5th leading rusher. Boston Scott's the 11th leading rusher. I mean, guys who are just not part of the game plan whatsoever for more than a quarter of the season now thrown in there.
Well, you're talking about just over the last 3 weeks.
Over the last 3 weeks.
Right, right.
Yeah.
He's not the 5th leading.
No, I said over the last 3 weeks.
Over 3 weeks,
Right.
And Hurts is part of that rushing game.
And
right
Hurts
now.
is
Right, well,
actually
that's the key
Hurts is
point.
the 10th
Big
leading
way.
rusher.
That's the key point.
They have 3 of the top
Yeah.
11 leading rushers over the last 3 weeks.
Because the designed run element with Hurts is a big factor, and when you're in the gun in particular.
There's something to be said for I'm going to line it up and do it until you stop me, and for 3 weeks. So, because some of the times they're not trying to fool anybody. They're just going out there and running the ball.
The offensive line play has been stellar.
Yeah.
Especially the interior linemen. They've been stellar. They feed off of this. This is something that they enjoy, and it helps everyone out. Makes the play action game potent.
I was just going to say, not to knock you, Jeff, but you're not quite correct when you say they're not trying to fool anybody. You're saying that because they're running the ball.
Well, I more meant when they were going under center and running. Now that they're spreading
but
it
when
out,
you're in
yes.
the gun,
right.
there is a deception element to the run game, and because of the Hurts design run factor.
Right.
So there is a deception
read or
element
whatever you want to do
to
with
that when
No,
he's
yeah,
in the gun.
I wasn't meaning schematically. I meant philosophically.
Right, philosophically, they want to run.
So they're going to
this.
come and run the ball.
Question for you, Jason, as a former player, when you sit on the sidelines or you go to the bench after a play and you guys are running the heck out of it, which we didn't say a lot with Andy Reid. But you were saying how the O-linemen liked it. What would you hear them say? You could just tell their body language?
Running. They tell go back to the coach. Hey, keep running. You hear it in the meeting. Lane Johnson be like, continue to run the ball. Like we've been hearing that a lot from the offensive linemen. And they say they'll go right to the head coach or the offensive coordinator. Hey man, keep running the ball. Keep running because they love that aspect of it.
Did you guys notice
it's
Lane
frustrating.
Johnson
in the middle of the run?
In the middle of the run. Yeah, because it's frustrating always getting hit. You being the aggressor is fun for an offensive lineman. Stepping back in pass protection the entire game gets tiring because you're just getting teed off on, you know?
Jay, I know you feel a certain level of vindication because you and Quentin Michael, in the Q&A show, as early as August, we're going into the year, we're saying the only chance that you felt that this team had to compete and succeed and potentially make the playoffs was by being a run-first team. You said that going into the year. And it took several weeks, but now this is showing that you were right.
Well,
at least for now.
Yeah, at least for now. But I don't think it's rocket science. It's just a bunch of things, right? You got young receivers. You can't necessarily rely upon them. You got a young quarterback that hadn't seen much, NFL defenses. And your strength of your team is the running back group. When you can
And the O-line.
And the offensive line,
yeah, sure.
Offensive line and the running back group. You can, get a guy in Jordan Howard that wasn't on the roster, bring him in, and he's, on the shelf, and you put him in there, and in the last, 3 weeks, he's 5th in the league in rushing. You got Boston Scott, same way. All of these guys that are in front of them, that's a deep room. So I think that was the strength of their team, the offensive line.
And keep in mind, too, particularly over these last number of weeks, what is Jordan Howard's game? He's a downhill runner.
Yep.
And when you put the quarterback in the gun with the zone read element, it's 99% inside zone.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what he is. He's a downhill runner. So, he's not truly an outside zone guy. He's not a one cut. He's not a burst guy on the outside. He's a downhill competitive runner.
I believe Boston, had, majority of the big runs this game, because the shotgun kind of lends to his style a little bit more than Jordan Howard's, but they're going to play both.
Yeah.
Are you sure you were a wide receiver in the NFL?
Oh, I was a blocking wide receiver.
You must have been, because when I say something like you make a great point, every wide receiver is going to sit there and gloat and be the diva, and you're like, it's not
I have a
rocket
question
science.
about that.
What's that?
Does that come from coaching? Because I've been watching, obviously I watch pretty much every team with the tape study I do, and contrary to what a lot of people might believe, the Patriots have run the ball more than any team in the National Football League with running backs. Because obviously their quarterback's not a factor in their run game.
Yeah.
And everybody's talking about Mac Jones, deservedly so. He's doing fine. But they've run the ball more than any team in the league. And when I watch their tape, Jacoby Myers, he blocks.
Yeah.
And he gets after it.
Yeah.
How is that kind of dealt with, within a team? Because to really have a great run game, your receivers have to block.
Well, yeah. So the receivers are responsible from I would say 7 yards and beyond.
Right.
They're responsible for long runs. Long runs don't happen without receivers. So I think that's a coaching thing earlier. By the time
Like
you get to the
that's set
NFL,
early. Yeah.
by the time NFL is too late because guys are already kind of set in their ways unless you have a team full of dogs that go out there and block and then you're the only like outlier in the room. And otherwise,
Because the Patriots run a lot of pin pull, so you get Myers having to block,
Yes.
linebackers at the second level,
Sometimes you take pride. Like when I was in school, I took pride of it. My coach would call us out, Coach Carr. He would take pride because we had safeties in there. We had to play against Bob Sanders all the time and Mike Doss and all of these heavy
good players,
run guys. And they'd be like, hey, Avant, this is your week. I don't want him to be on a running back. If he gets more than 10 tackles, or he gets more than 8 tackles, you didn't
That's
do your
on you,
job.
yeah.
And you just take it as a challenge. You know?
right.
So some guys have it. Some guys, you coach it early, it's easier.
Well, that's a good segue for our conversation because the Eagles will be getting back their run-blocking wide receiver who was mistakenly called a tight end last week by the broadcast crew in J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. You can understand why they made that mistake. But Arcega-Whiteside's healthy now, but the Eagles need to open up a spot to have Miles Sanders on the active roster. Yeah. And somebody's got to go down, and I know J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's name has been like, what's his purpose being on the roster when all he really is a blocking wide receiver. So we'll see what kind of move that they make there. But
Anderson, the offensive line, went on.
Oh, that's right. Anderson did go. Well, we'll see if Arcega-Whiteside plays at all.
I'll tell you this. It's not just the blocking for the running backs. Have you noticed that our screen game to the receivers have been non-existent?
Yep.
Right? And that's because you need the play to get started, and usually that's J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. You have a bunch of small guys get the play to start it out there against the cornerbacks. J.J.'s that guy to get it going.
Sure. So back to Miles Sanders being up and active and ready to go. It's kind of amazing that the Eagles have done what they've done for the last 3 weeks without him in his absence, although I've known that Philadelphia is the birthplace of a great conspiracy theory, and you have a small but large faction of fans saying that the reason the Eagles have ran the ball well in the last 3 weeks is because they've been without him, because apparently Miles Sanders is now a detriment to a downhill, move-the-chain style of running game, if you ask some people. That's all I'm saying. I will throw this out to you guys.
Well, they would be wrong.
I'm surprised you say that, Greg.
They would be wrong.
Yeah.
What did the tape tell you about Sanders' tape?
I watched his tape last year, this summer. I watched most of his runs, and last year I thought he improved dramatically from his rookie season in terms of running hard inside, getting hard yards. Because if you're going to be quote-unquote a feature back, and every team defines that differently, some teams have a back, they want to have 280 carries. Some teams feature back might get 200 carries.
Right.
It depends on the offense and the scheme. But if you're going to be that guy, which is what Sanders essentially is for the Eagles, then you have to get hard yards inside. And I thought last year he got those yards. I thought his style really, I don't want to say changed because it was always in him, obviously, but I thought he showed that a lot in 2020.
Yeah. There's a kind of I think what is a misperception of him being such a dancer, like he's always losing yards.
Right.
I mean, of course, his style, he does have, if you were going to compare it to Boston Scott or Jordan Howard, he does have a larger percentage of negative runs. He was also in an offense for the first 6 weeks where nobody ran the ball
Nobody ran the ball. Yeah.
That's my point being. He also has home run ability. Jason, what will that home run ability, in your mind, do for the way they're running the ball now?
Yeah, I think that comment is just it's wrong. It's wrong. And we're being nice.
We're being
nice. Miles is a plug and play player.
Yep.
So when he gets back, he gets majority of the carries. And somebody else has to go down. You have to do it that way because he's going to give you that home run ability. And you got to remember this too. He did dance a little bit more his first year. He had the best running back coach. A lot of people believe in the National Football League and Deuce Staley.
Right.
Deuce Staley is a butt kicker. He's a sergeant. Got him into a position where he was going to making one cut in the hole, that type of thing. And you put him in this situation, he's going to break off a 30-yarder. Some of these ones that Jordan Howard gets tackled on, he's going to bust one of those.
Yep.
And so, to me, this is what I think, and this is just speculation. I can't make this. This is just me speculating. Having Deuce Staley, whoever you have behind that, from the starting running back's perspective, may be a downgrade, and it takes some time to adjust to that. That's just just speculation, and that's just me being a player, former player, and how it is sometimes.
Sure.
And don't forget, the nature of their run game now has been much more downhill.
Yes.
So someone like Howard can succeed in that because that's what he is.
Well-
but I agree with Jason 100%.
I think what people have also forgotten, Adam, we talked about this, is that this new running game that we've seen, it actually started 4 weeks ago against the Raiders. The first drive, they were under center and downhill. Miles Sanders got 30 yards on 6 carries before getting injured, and then the game got out of hand and they really didn't get a chance to run the ball. But that's when the origins of the new running game started, Adam, and he was doing just fine carrying the ball.
Yeah, look, it's going to be fascinating to see. And then the other question is, right? Okay, so Sanders is back. What's the rotation going to be? Because you've got 4 backs now on your 53-man roster. You could dress all 4, but you can't play all 4. Because as we said earlier, Boston Scott never got a touch from scrimmage before Sanders got hurt. I got to think Howard's got to stay in this rotation. He has to. He's been a great story. You could have size to complement Sanders.
I think Boston is the guy.
Yeah, I think
Boston,
Boston,
then where's
Boston and
Gainwell?
right?
But yeah, and Gainwell's actually been barely used.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. I mean, he gets used in situations.
Very little, though.
He got used at the end of the first half. You know, he
Yeah.
gets used in specific situations. He's a good back. I mean,
I know.
they actually have a lot of good backs right now. It's
Embarrassment
going to be
of riches, right?
interesting to see how they play this out as the season progresses.
I think it's fair to say Miles is the most naturally talented back that they have.
Yes.
How do you put this in there? But yet and Jordan Howard of all 4 may be the most one-dimensional, but I feel like he's still got to get a fair share of carries for what they're doing right now. Is that fair?
Yeah. I would say I say Miles is the starter. Jordan Howard is the change of pace guy, and you have Gainwell because he has the
correct.
most
That's the way I would see it.
just adaptability. He can be an adjuster in a lot of situations, and Boston's the guy that's on the outside looking in right now.
So Boston Scott, take a seat.
For right now.
He was before, remember? I mean,
I would see it that way as well.
Yeah. I don't disagree.
And as you said earlier, Jeff, it's so amazing to me that Jordan Howard's on the practice squad before all this happened, right? And Boston Scott never got a touch.
Right.
And Gainwell was the number 2. Gainwell now has been barely gets touches. And then you got today the matchup of the best run defense in the National Football League. What's going to be the approach?
Right.
There's so many subplots to the running game. And think about this, right? Let's get back to Jalen Hurts and the amount of attempts that he was having per game. First 7 games, 35 attempts per game, right?
Yep.
Now, over the last 3 games, just over 18 per game.
Yeah.
And it's winning football. They're playing much better. And they could have won that Chargers game.
Right.
So I got to think the approach will be the same. Keep the attempts in the 20s. Even if you fall behind, you could still run the football. There's no rule that says you can't do that unless you're down by 2 or more touchdowns.
Sure.
And anything could happen. I find it hard to believe that they'll fall far behind in this game.
Describe to me what you had a personnel source tell you about the Eagles running game as it pertains to Miles Sanders.
This is through text. So
it's hard to believe, but it's true.
So one of the runs after this source saw the Eagles coaching tape last week said one of the carries you would have taken long to the house is the quote.
Right.
I don't know which run. He didn't say which run. He said there's no question that there's a difference between Jordan Howard has been a great story and Miles Sanders who's got juice. Mm-hmm. So and remember, Sanders had that 82-yard touchdown run last year?
Yeah, he had a 78 and an 82.
270 plus touchdown runs.
He had one where he fumbled, and then Arcega-Whiteside got the credit for the touchdown. But yeah.
But so that's what you're missing: the juice, the explosion. I know people say, "Oh, that's a luck play," or he made one move. He made one guy miss.
Actually, one was against New Orleans, if I'm not mistaken.
That's the one we're talking about.
Yeah,
against New Orleans. Yes.
Yeah.
He made one guy miss, and he took it to the house.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have that. Gainwell is explosive, but not like Miles Sanders.
Correct.
Yeah, agreed. But Jordan Howard has better vision, and that's the thing that you guys like. So when you're a guy that's the 3 yards in the cloud of dust guy, you have great vision.
Right,
in
you
this
have to.
NFL.
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
to have it.
yeah.
It's just like me running the 4.640. You got to do something really well. Like you don't miss a cut, you don't miss a catch.
Right.
So Miles has the option to miss one every now and then.
If I were to be nitpicky on Miles, I think I meant to say this, is that just from my own personal watching, it's not that he dances a whole lot like people think. I feel like sometimes he does not follow the blocking of the specific play that way, which is a little bit of an impatience. But I actually thought he had improved on that, as Greg mentioned, from year 1 to year 2. And then it was just so many limited carries this year, kind of hard to really evaluate him.
The other thing is, though, in the pass game, it's alignment and also catching the football. He's had some drops.
Miles?
And
he's been dropping it.
Oh, yeah. But not this year, though.
But you know, it's
You
crazy.
saw him in practice
It's
like
crazy.
he
wasn't in camp.
It's crazy because Miles Sanders' catching ability, he can catch. He's a natural catcher to me. It's just that mentally, I don't know what it is that he just doesn't have the confidence when it comes to catching. But his first year, he was fine. Second year, and the second year in particular, really bad.
Carl Stevenson on YouTube asks, guys, welcome back. With Miles Sanders back, do you think we'll see more screens or play action? The screens is definitely an interesting point about that because
Gainwell can do that too. In fact, I'm waiting because the Saints are one of the worst teams to cover anyone who lines up in the slot at receiver.
Right.
By the way, Barkley got him on a touchdown, Saquon Barkley, against the Giants, and when the Giants upset the Saints. Why can't we see Gainwell do that? That's the thing about Gainwell we're waiting for. The explosive plays in the pass game.
Absolutely.
Well, he's not playing a lot of snaps.
I know.
Right,
I know.
Screen game, usually, veteran players are better at running it because you can't drift. You can't be outside the numbers. You saw Boston Scott last week on, I believe it was a second down and a second and long. It was a nice screen where he had to wait and stay inside. That patience, guys just want to drift toward the sideline, and usually younger players do it. So if Boston Scott's out, the screen game does get hurt unless Miles is running it a little bit, so.
As for the play action, I thought you saw some decent amount last week, and some different types, right? You saw them moving Jalen Hurts out of the pocket at times. In fact, the touchdown to Devontae Smith that ever he threw was a designed move out of the pocket.
It was.
For that play. So you're starting to see Nick Sirianni, Patullo, Steichen all kind of come up with different ways to get this offense to look good.
That was just a great football play all around.
Yeah.
Because that was great. Surtain couldn't have done it.
He couldn't have
covered
done
it
better.
It was a great ball. It was a great ball.
Chance.
Chance and great coverage.
And the pass to Quez Watkins not only was his best pass of his career.
Yeah.
How do you drop, Jason? How do you drop that?
I'll give you. How do you drop it? It's hard to drop it, but what Quez did is stop this feet. So right at the end of the play, where there's a guy feeling pressure and don't know where the sideline is, all of those things. Right at the catching point, his feet stop rather than running through it. So even if it hits his hands and goes through, his body is still there, just kind of repositioning.
Right.
But right at the end, if you guys go back and watch that tape, right at the end, he stops his feet and the ball just goes through. But your body momentum will kind of cradle the ball back in towards.
That was a great throw.
Yeah.
Good
Poor
point.
Jalen Hurts. This guy has had touchdowns just wiped away, left, right. Whether guys are stepping out of bounds, guy just goes right through his hands.
Offensive pass interference.
That's right.
Remember Goddard had an incredible one earlier in the season. It was at home, where he just physically just went through the pile and then got called back.
All right, look, I asked our intern Zane Gonzalez, who does analytics, just to give us
Not the kicker.
Not the kicker. Some research on Miles Sanders. A couple of things he came up with. Sanders already has 10 forced missed tackles this year, which is more than he had last year. And obviously last year he had 100 more carries than he does now. And this year so far, over 70% of Miles Sanders' carries have come where there was at least 4 yards to go for first down, and 64% have come with at least 7 yards to go for first down. And yet he's had 2 games where 50%, almost half of his carries, have gotten the first down. So what you're seeing is a guy with very limited opportunities still being able to get big chunks of yards when needed and move the chains. So kind of counter to the idea that he's losing yards for this offense, which, again, I think we all can debunk that conspiracy theory right now.
He's 4.8 yards a carry this season when they weren't running the ball, and so he'll be fine, just fine.
Absolutely. All right, big thanks to Zane Gonzalez, our intern from Penn State, for research on that. Look, guys, we talked about this already. We've covered the league, all of us. You've played in it long enough to know that when you're doing something really well, your opponent is eventually going to do its best to sell out and try to stop you. And that brings us to this game today, where you've got the Eagles' #1 rush offense versus the Saints' #1 rush defense. You know, Jay, you guys always say the opponent gets paid too, right?
Eagles,
when things don't go well.
Did you say Eagles' #1 rush offense? I can't believe I heard that.
Hard to believe, right?
You're talking about
over the last
3 weeks.
Actually, really last 4 weeks, 160 yards per game.
But I'm pretty sure that they're approaching even with
I think
that.
The Patriots right now are
the numbers are so massive lately. They might start looking at the NFL.
They may be approaching the top 10.
The Saints are one of 2 teams allowing fewer than 80 rushing yards per game. All right, they lead the NFL at 72.9 yards allowed. And I don't know if you guys know Seth Walder much from ESPN. He does a lot of analytics
Used
work.
to cover the Jets,
He said he uses their metric called run-stop-win rate, and says that the Saints have the highest one that they've seen since 2006 when they started tracking it. So that's about 15 years ago.
What is the definition of that? Do we know what that is?
I would have to say on whether it's it's got to be down and distance related, and how much the running back gets compared to what's expected. You're asking the wrong guy, Greg.
But it's an analytic number. I got it.
Yeah.
Listen,
it's a real
Greg is not going
scientific
for
way
any
of
of that.
saying.
I got to know what that means.
No, we like to know what it means. We like to know. I
want to know what that means.
This one I'd like to know.
I would love to, but if I got to spend the next hour and a half on that.
I love the expected yardage.
That's my favorite one.
That's
Expected
the
yardage.
expected yardage.
Like, you just think everybody gets tackled on contact.
But I mean, but a serious question. What is win rate?
I think it's a really good question. We could probably talk about all the metrics that go into it.
Let me put it this way. They've been incredible. Against opposing running backs who've given up less than 3 yards per carry. I mean, there's your number.
Yeah. Well, they've got good personnel. Look, it starts with their front line. Onyemata is a good tackle. Cameron Hayward, good defensive lineman. Cameron Jordan. I'm sorry, Cameron Jordan. Davenport, I guess, is getting better. Which is
he's playing.
He's getting better.
Their linebackers
are really good. Yeah, they can run.
So now, just to talk about the Saints for a moment.
Yeah.
The Saints they play both base, nickel, and dime, and that will often depend on the opponent. So we'll see what the Eagles line up in today with Goddard ideally playing the whole game, whether the Eagles go with 12, 13, how many snaps.
Right.
Because the Saints don't play a ton of base unless the offense really dictates that they do that.
Sure.
I don't think they want to play a lot of base.
Right.
I think they're very comfortable playing nickel. What they've done is they've taken P.J. Williams, who's got pretty good size. He's essentially replaced Gardner Johnson when they go to their sort of base nickel. Okay. So he kind of plays that role as the Sam linebacker. But DeMario Davis, to me, never. People who watch tape will tell you, DeMario Davis is in that category of the top 3 to 5 3-down linebackers in the league. He's in the Bobby Wagner, Fred Warner, Darius Leonard conversation. He's that good a linebacker, plays every snap.
Now, Hurts got them last year. He ran for over 100 yards, and if I remember correctly, they tried to use Davis sometimes in a spiral, or he always seemed to be around Hurts when Hurts took off, but it felt like Jalen was a step faster than them, and maybe that's preparation and not seeing him. You have to wonder, Jason, how much game planning they put into the Hurts run element for this game, knowing what happened last year.
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking they're going to have a plan to stop him. And they have some pretty fast linebackers. With Alexander and Davis and Ellis. He played a lot last week actually. Caden Ellis played a lot last week. So I think they have the ingredients to spy him if they would like, and the man coverage on the outside gives them that ability. Right, because you can always bring a safety down and just have him in the hole and just there to stop any end breakers, and also if Jalen Hurts run. So there's so many things they can do because of the players that they have on the edges. So
what you're saying is a lot of their great run defense starts just with their ability to be able to guard wide receivers one-on-one on the perimeter and then use extra help in the box.
They can, and we don't. As an offense, the things that will beat them naturally, like the Titans did last week, was a bunch of crossing routes and a bunch of pick plays. We don't do those things particularly well, where we have a lot of meshes and it's a lot of reading it out. That's not in Jalen Hurts' bag yet. Eventually it'll get there. So those things, it presents a challenge for us because we have to beat people kind of vertically where he can see it, or off a play action where there's a guy close to the line of scrimmage. Right. So some of the things that you have to do with beat man coverage is not in our best interest as an offense at this stage. So it presents a challenge for us.
Well, and now I'm talking about third down, but they had played a lot of two-man coverage that they played the most in the NFL until C.J. Gardner-Johnson got hurt. And now their percentage has gone down a little bit because P.J. Williams was the safety, the deep safety with Marcus Williams when they played two-man because they played dime, 6 DBs. And they still play dime on third down because Bradley Roby is there.
He's been playing.
And he's been playing a lot of snaps. But their percentage of two-man coverage has gone down, particularly on third down.
Yeah, two-man is a great defense. I don't necessarily know how they'll play it versus us because you have such a running. And I'll go back to the Broncos game. I thought one of the best plays of the game was his 32-yard run. Because he stepped back. He saw that they were in man coverage, let everybody go. It was more of a brain than just a run around and just scramble for no reason. It was like, oh, they want to play me man coverage. So I'm just going to let the guys go past, turn their backs, and I'm going to take off and run for 32 yards. That's what you can get in 22-man or cover 2.
So the other thing you could get on third down, because they play 3-2-6 dime. So they play 3 down linemen and they keep Davis, and Alexander on the field. So they play 3 down linemen, 2 linebackers.
Right.
Okay, that's what they do. They don't play 4-1-6. They play 3-2-6.
Okay.
So they could end up, depending on how they want to play it, they could end up with 3 pass rushers and 2 underneath defenders if they choose to kind of try to keep Hurts from being a factor as a runner.
That's a great point.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm really curious to see what they do that might be different from last year when Hurts passed for 176 yards and then ran for an additional 101 yards. This is a totally different offense he's functioning in now. And, you know, the way they're running the ball, I put this down just for perspective, right? This is nothing other than perspective. But Jalen Hurts' last 3 weeks is 36 for 54, 443 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That's his throwing numbers. Patrick Mahomes last week versus the Raiders, 35 for 50, 406 yards, 5 touchdowns,
that is
no
amazing.
interceptions. I mean, talk about the contrast for what the Eagles are doing compared to everybody else.
Working.
I mean, it's crazy. It's working.
Yeah,
it is.
Well, the Chiefs have been losing a lot too.
It's
so.
the interesting thing about Hurts, though, is he's one of the most blitzed quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yes.
Particularly on 3rd down. So it'll be very interesting to see what the Saints choose to do. But the key factor with Hurts, and I know you mentioned the 2 interceptions, but he's not been turning the ball over. And that's, see, as we hope that Hurts develops, okay, the book's still out, obviously, just because they've won 2 of the last 3 and their offense seems to be playing better, and it is playing better. The book's clearly not out on Hurts.
Right.
But when you're a quarterback that's going to miss some things, as long as you're not turning it over, you can live with that.
Absolutely.
You can live with growth and development incrementally as long as the quarterback's not turning it over. There's not negative plays versus blitz. I think he's been blitzed well over 100 times. He's only been sacked 5 and only thrown 1 interception. So even when there's pressure, he's not turning the ball over.
It came after him last week. I thought he handled it probably the best he's handled it all season. Against a team, you know this, Vic Fangio's got a defense that's hard to decipher. He did a good job.
Yeah, so that's the key.
Yeah, easy to say in retrospect. I did wonder coming out of that game if I know Vic Fangio felt like he had to blitz a lot because he's got no Von Miller, he's got no Bradley Chubb, really didn't have a lot of pass rushers, household names. But I wonder if he came out of that game thinking he may have tried to throw a few too many at Jalen in the first half there.
Well, I thought that Jalen showed a bunch of maturity that game, and he had a lot of growth. He climbed the pocket about 4 or 5 times, which we haven't seen.
Right.
I seen him look maybe one time where he didn't know what he was doing, but he still ended up rolling to the right and completing the pass, right? So I thought that it was a lot of growth in that game, and so him stepping up in the pocket and getting away from the edge pressure was really great.
We've talked, Adam, about the last 2 weeks where against the Chargers, he struggled in the first half, left some points on the board with that back pedal to Devontae Smith, then had a better second half. And then last week against Denver, clearly maybe his best first half of football.
Yeah.
Obviously did not have to throw the ball. He was 1 of 3 in the second half. He did have an interception, almost had another one.
Yeah.
This feels like the game because of what the Saints can do to stop a run, where he may have to get that quote-unquote, all right, let's see Jalen win the game for us type of day. I mean,
Potentially to throw it more than the 18 times he's thrown a game over the last 3. Yeah, I can see that. And again, it's not like the Saints are a defense you can't throw it against. I'm looking at the players that really did well against him. Galladay did. John Ross beat Paulson Dabo on a 9 route. He was lined up tight, just ran right by him. Yeah. Just straight down the middle. John Ross got him on that play.
Yeah.
Kadarius Toney did well in that game where they upset the Saints. Cordero Patterson crushed them a couple weeks ago in that upset at home. Zacchaeus from this area did well.
Yes.
Kendrick Bourne lined up in the slot. Myers slot. Moore could line up anywhere. And Chris Godwin, who plays a lot in the slot, had a huge game against them.
Yeah, he did. Gardner Johnson had a tough game that game.
Hold that thought.
He's not playing today.
Everybody hold that thought. I want to get into that concept, but first I wanted to take a quick break to hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars, including the voice of the Eagles, Mr. Merrill Reese.
Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, big thanks to our friends at Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA. If you do head in there, tell them Adam and Jeff sent you. You'll get a great deal. You can even tell them Greg Cosell or Jason Avant sent you, and you might even get a better
And
deal.
Avonte Maddox got his deal there.
Avonte Maddox got a deal there, and he got a deal this
And
week.
Dallas
That's
got
even
her.
more lucrative, so good for them. You guys are talking about the Saints' pass defense in particular. Adam, you were getting into some of the wide receivers, the number 2 wide receivers who have been able to do well because the Saints are pretty good at taking out the number 1 guy. If you look at what they've done this year to some of the better receivers in the league, Devontae Adams, 5 for 56. DJ Moore did all right, 8 for 79 and a touchdown. Terry McLaurin, 4 for 46. DK Metcalf had 2 catches for 96 yards. Now, one of them was an 84-yarder.
Yeah.
But if you hold DK Metcalf to 2 catches, I think that's, in general, pretty good. Mike Evans, 2 catches, 48 yards. And A.J. Brown last week,
Lattimore owns
just
that.
1 catch for 16
I don't
yards.
understand Greg, you're the perfect
You
guy
mean
to talk
Lattimore
about
owns
this.
Evans?
Yeah, right. But then Lattimore will give up plays. I don't know if he falls down.
Yeah, that's hard for me to understand because
Yeah.
he's really talented in terms of his
Do you
physical traits.
do you think
so?
he-
I can't speak to what's going on in his head.
For both of you guys, because you played the position, Lattimore's a guy, talks a lot, he gets into guys' heads. Jason, how do you handle that when a guy starts talking and is trying to shut you down like that?
No, it depends on your personality type. If you play well with trash talk, it's
Right,
a game
right,
for
right,
you.
right.
Okay.
Then there are some guys that don't do well with trash talk, so just stay within yourself and focus on what you have to do. Like, so I'm not a big trash talker, so I'm going to shut you up and I'll cut you every time until you shut up. So that's that. So you have to be. It all depends on the player. But I will say this about Lattimore. Lattimore, the plays that he's given up are usually some type of rub route where he's like he gave up a long one last week. On the left side, they got a little rub slant, and
With
the guy
Marcus
ended up
Johnson,
getting,
former Eagle.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
It happened, and it happened a bunch in that game where he's always trailing because they're taking him through a bunch of meshes and things like that. It's hard for anybody to cover that. Sure. The only other time he gets beat is a perfect pass.
Right.
Like, and Mike Evans has had a few of those where it's just a perfect
Sure.
pass. But if you're trying to beat him vertically one-on-one, it's a very, very hard thing to do. You're going to need the coaching to put him through multiple picks and stuff like that.
And it wouldn't surprise me because I think Lattimore likes this style because we've seen him do it with Evans. It would not surprise me at all if early in the game he's willing to take a 15-yard penalty to try to get into Devonta Smith.
Yeah.
And be physical, because we know Smith is only 158 pounds.
Right.
If Lattimore does something, even if he gets a penalty.
Guess what?
Just,
He did it to Metcalf.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And it shook Metcalf up. And
That's the way he plays.
Yeah.
That's
Hey, you
good.
got
I
to
love
respect
that.
it.
I love that.
Yeah,
I think it's
you
great.
agree?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the way he plays.
I love that.
But he's really talented. He's one of the few guys in the league.
Jay, you know he went to Ohio State, right?
Hey,
I mean, come on.
I don't care where he went. I love a brand
I know,
of
I'm
football. Like it's just me. I love it. So
I respect that too.
Jason, who was the biggest talker that you went up against, DB, offhand?
DB wise, oh man, probably in practice, probably Asante. Asante doesn't shut up.
D'Angelo Hall.
D'Angelo Hall. D'Angelo Hall. Yeah, D'Angelo Hall doesn't shut up. Yeah.
What kind of
So
stuff do they say?
I used
Clean it
to
up for
choke him
television.
up.
What do they say?
Oh, just like Raleigh Cooper. Oh, he would go after Cooper. Like certain guys, like if he
Shocking.
get under his skin, like they say some. I can't say it on television.
Deshaun.
Okay.
He used to go after Deshaun.
Adam Pac-Man Jones had the worst.
Was he a creative cursor?
He's pretty creative in all of his violations. I
Adam
have to say.
Pac-Man Jones, he had some stuff, and he had some stuff for it. It was that time because it was Cooper again,
Right.
And it was bad the entire game. I had to go and tell him to stop it. Yeah, I felt so bad. I was like, dude, listen, look, buddy. He's like, no, man. It was really
Would
bad.
they look up like family stuff? Because I've heard
There's
some
guys that
players will
talk
look
about
up.
your mom.
Right.
There's
right,
guys
right.
that talk about your girlfriend.
Oh,
like,
my
oh man,
goodness
your
gracious.
girlfriend's in Miami last week. She got whatever.
Right.
So they go after you now. Especially if they know you're a little sensitive. So
Stuff go. That's amazing.
All right.
a little too
What
much
guys will do
information
to
right
slow the opponent down. Wow.
On a positive, nice more note, we want to say hello to Daryl Barnes, who left a comment that his son was born at 6:50 a.m. today, so he knows
Oh,
the
nice.
Eagles are going to pull out that
you go.
W. So congratulations.
Well, the
to
important thing
Daryl.
is you're going to watch the game.
That was he's watching this show.
He's watching the show. He's still in the
Baby's
hospital.
napping.
Maybe he has his priorities a little mixed up today.
Honey, what are you watching? Honey.
Not right now, honey. I'm watching it.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting what you said about the potential, roughing up of Devontae Smith, because the data here stands to reason that Devontae is gonna see a lot today from the Saints defense, and that somebody else is going to have to step up. If a guy like Marcus Johnson, former Eagle, can get 100 yards, And Cordarrelle Patterson is another guy who got him for 100 yards, who's a
way over. He
running
got
back
open
slash
repeatedly.
receiver.
Well, Patterson had that big play in right at the end of the game
Right.
for something like 65 yards, where he did beat Lattimore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So-
Godwin got him a
run,
lot.
too.
What's that?
And I've always thought that Patterson was used wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
Apparently,
always thought
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Like,
man,
always.
you gotta
30-year-old
credit
breakout
Arthur
player,
Smith.
30 years old.
Yeah.
I've always thought that. I'm like, why doesn't he play receiver more?
See,
Like,
I
there's
agree with
nothing.
you.
Yeah.
Well, he came out of Tennessee as a receiver.
Yeah,
right.
He came out of Tennessee with Justin Hunter. Same year, Justin Hunter was another guy that people thought would be a
Tennessee
good
guy,
player.
yeah.
Yep.
And it didn't quite work out. And Patterson, for some reason, people right away saw him as kind of a movable chess piece as opposed to a receiver.
And a goal line
And I
back
thought
in
he
the
was a
Patriots.
receiver.
And hurting.
And I thought he was a receiver. I agree with you.
And then the Patriots turned him into a running back slash kick returner.
Goal line
if I'm
guy,
not mistaken.
yeah.
Yeah. No, credit to Arthur Smith.
He's a big man who can run.
Yeah,
But
definitely
one
big.
point about Lattimore. Lattimore can do something that's very hard to do, and Jason will appreciate this. When corners are turned with their body facing inside, almost all the time you can throw an out route against them because they can't get their body
Yeah.
turned.
The hips.
He's one of the few guys that can make that transition and play an out route with his body facing inside.
Definitely can.
He definitely can.
Definitely can,
And
yeah.
that is a rare trait. There's probably not 5 corners in the NFL who can do that.
Yeah,
Right.
hip mobility.
Yes.
That's it.
Right.
Guys can
Flip those
transition
hips.
better.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's not a small guy either. It's not like we're talking about a 180-pound corner.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
6'1", 6'2" guy,
Yeah.
right?
as it pertains to today, because Adam pointed out the Saints are also a very good team at defending the tight end. So
Really
Devontae
good.
Smith should be in for an afternoon. Dallas Goedert. It seems, based on what we were talking about with the number 2 and number 3 guys, a Galladay, a John Ross, Zacchaeus, to be able to flourish, that the Eagles will need
Someone
somebody,
else.
whether
Yeah.
it's Quez Watkins, whether it's Jalen Reagor, or somebody else to get in there and produce for them today.
Watkins is a vertical slot. This is what we saw in training camp. Mm-hmm. And he has lined up in the slot before. That's a guy you think he could do it. Line him up inside because they got to get someone else going.
Well, what I think what you're going to see, and again, you don't do this on 20 snaps, but Paulson Adebo plays meaningful snaps. They've started to work Roby in more because Roby is also really gifted. He's always been really gifted athletically.
That's Bradley Roby, correct?
Yeah,
What did I
from,
say?
yeah.
No,
yeah,
I'm just
Roby.
making sure I have the right
Ohio
Roby.
State kid.
Yeah. Well, he's a first-round pick. With
Yeah.
the team.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
very
Broncos.
gifted.
Yep.
But Paulson Adebo is a rookie from Stanford. He's been playing a lot of snaps.
Okay.
In fact, he played almost all the snaps opposite Lattimore when Roby was hurt. Now they're starting to mix and match. But Adebo is pretty sound, but he can't run really well. So I would think when he's out there on the outside, that's when you've got to take a shot here and there.
So
you've got to make
so
him
it's either
turn
Quez
and
or
run.
Jalen Reagor.
You agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. Quez, that's Quez's guy.
Yeah.
It's Paulson. Paulson Adebo.
Yeah.
That's his guy. When you get a one-on-one situation, and again, remember, it goes into Jalen Hurts' comfort. One-on-one outside is Quez. I don't have to worry about seeing the vision of multiple
Right,
players
right,
in the
right.
middle of the field. It's a one-on-one. We may see that 2 or 3 times
Right.
today.
I think you have to.
Yeah.
You got to take a shot. You have to challenge that.
I personally think it's better for the Eagles and for the player if Jalen Reagor is actually that guy who establishes a rhythm with the quarterback. And this is a guy who's a first-round pick who's been absent for the. I mean, he made a nice catch last week on the only target that was thrown to him. He had to come back and make a sprawling catch. It's got to be a
I
connection.
hope you guys recognized last week that Quez was out there
Yes,
in
more-
base.
more than
yeah,
Reagor.
he was out there in base when there was 2 receivers out there. Quez was out on the outside.
Yeah.
So
Didn't they run some 13 personnel 2 weeks where Watkins was the only wide receiver in the
Yeah.
formation?
Yeah.
In fact, the coaches were asked about that. Yep.
Yeah. And I don't know if that was trying to create a little guesswork or if it was just.
Devontae will be that guy majority of the time. Quez may have the shot plays off of it. Usually that's a bigger guy that's in that 13. That's probably going to be JJ in the red zone.
Right. Well, very interesting to see who steps up for the Eagles today because, again, it's advantage Eagles on offense. I'm sorry, advantage Eagles on defense with all the injuries plaguing the Saints offense. But this Saints defense is good, and I think the Eagles, for the last 3 weeks, have not seen something like this, and they're really going to need somebody other than the usual suspects to come through for them. No doubt about that. All right, we thank you again for tuning into Inside the Birds pregame live with Jeff Mosher, Adam Kaplan, Greg Cosell, and Jason Avant. We're going to pause real quick to hear from our friends at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook.
This is my city. This is a city that knows how to play. A city that's in it for the win. So I go to the place that gets that. where they know how Philly likes to play, and where I know my seat is always ready. This is my place.
All right, big thanks to our friends at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook, where Philly loves a winner. It's now time for our weekly segment with former Eagles Pro Bowl safety Quentin Michael, one half of the Q&A show on Inside the Birds platform. In this edition of Q's Views, we talked about Saints head coach Sean Payton and what makes him such a good head coach. We are here with former Eagles Pro Bowl safety Quentin Michael for Q's Views. All right, Q, big game for the Eagles as they come home. They haven't won a game at the Link since they beat the Saints last year. It's been almost a year. As someone who has played for the Eagles, has played at the Link, lives in this area, you've been through on some teams that weren't great, but it never seemed this bad for the Eagles at the Link to go this long without a home win.
Yeah, it's really a odd thing, and every team, every playoff caliber team, every team that's worth its salt is good at home, and so you want to win at home, and hopefully get a playoff game at home, and so all those things really matter. So it's really kind of odd, and I'm hoping that they can kind of turn that around, because if you can't win at home, that's pretty much half your games right there. So that's hopefully they get right today.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, what's helped get them right over the last few weeks and start to look a little bit more functional is their rushing offense. It's rushed for over 600 yards in 3 games, which is hard to imagine. Today, against the Saints, they faced the #1 rushing defense, and not only are they good, Q, but they're really good at stopping the run. So if you're Nick Sirianni, how are you approaching a game like this? Do you still come out trying to do what you do best, or do you feel like you have to mix it up right from the start?
Well, usually, if I was an offensive coordinator, there's 2 ways to look at it. You can come out and just try to impose your will, or you can come out throwing the ball and try to soften them up later down in the second half for the run game to kind of pick up. You got a young quarterback in Hurts. And obviously he's kind of been up and down this year, so I don't know if that's particularly the best idea. But I think what would work, what the Eagles should do, Sirianni should do, is what's been working, continuing to change up the run game, change up the running back tandems, the RPO stuff. I just think keeping the way that they've been running these last few games, changing it up, keeping different looks at the defense. I think that's really what the best way to attack this team. You gotta be consistent, and you gotta be patient with it. It's probably not going to look good early, but you got to keep going and hope eventually something will pop.
Sure. We've been talking about Miles Sanders today and what he can do for this Eagles offense. And there is kind of a school of thought from some that you don't fix what's not broken, and he hasn't been a part of the last 3 weeks. If you're the coordinator, if you're the head coach, do you have to find a way to get Miles Sanders involved, or are you still looking at Jordan Howard and Boston Scott saying those are the guys that got me here?
Oh, absolutely. Miles is a home run hitter, and he definitely needs to be on the field, and he needs to get his touches. And just because you have 3 or 4 very good running backs doesn't mean that you just have to throw one out in the trash, right? So you can come in with some sets where you can put 2 running backs in the game, put Gainwell in the slot or Boston Scott in the slot, Miles in the backfield. Like, there's a lot of good that can come from having the 4 running backs up and active and able to get in the game. And it's another way. I think it's another element that can keep teams kind of off balance.
Absolutely. The Saints, Q, do a good job of taking out a team's #1 wideout. If you go look, they played the Titans. A.J. Brown, just 1 catch. They played the Buccaneers. Mike Evans, 2 catches. Devontae Adams from the Packers, 5 for 48 yards. They'll give up some yards to the slot receiver or maybe the secondary receiver, but they look to take out the #1 guy. So assuming their plan is to stop Devontae Smith for the Eagles today, how important or how concerned are you with this offense and a real lack of a #2 wide receiver option so far that we've seen?
Yeah, very concerned. It's when you have the good running game that we've been having, it kind of overshadows the issues with the receiving core. There definitely needs to be a guy step up. I think Quez Watkins is slowly he's slowly getting there. Obviously last week he had the drop in the end zone. I don't anticipate him continuing down that line. So, he definitely needs to step up. He definitely needs to be able to make plays because, listen, they're going to make sure they take Devontae out of the game. Hurts has been kind of eyeing him up. So I think Quez needs to step up. He's got to make some plays. And then also tight end wise, Dallas Goedert's got to really step up as well. He can end up being that second threat down the middle of the field. And that's really what is going to help the Eagles win if they can get him, kind of going.
Sure. Let's flip and talk about the Eagles defense. And you have faced Sean Payton many times in your career, both as an Eagle and as a Carolina Panther. What should the Eagles defense expect from New Orleans offense? Even without Jameis Winston, obviously Trevor Simeon's the quarterback and they've had some injuries, but what is the hallmark of a Sean Payton coached offense?
Well, it's definitely going to be well thought out, well planned. You got to switch up your coverages, switch up your defenses because he'll figure it out pretty quickly. But no, you definitely have to be, leery of him in the backfield and in the passing game. And Simeon, he hasn't been a starter for a long time, but he's a very, very good quarterback. He's accurate. He knows where to put the ball. He's smart. Mm-hmm. And those are the type of quarterbacks that really succeed in Sean Payton's defense. He had Drew Brees for all those years. So, he's going to be able to pick up the coverages and understand what defenses he's seeing. And it's going to be tough. Just because Jameis Winston is out doesn't mean it's going to be an easy one.
Right. Now, of course, the Saints, they don't have Mike Thomas anymore or Marquez Colston like when you played. Mike Thomas is out for the year. But their wide receivers are, I'd say, sneaky good. They have a kid, Marquez Callaway, who's come on a little bit lately, and a short guy, Deontay Harris, who's got a lot of burst about him. You and Jason Avant had noted that last week the Eagles corners played a little bit more tighter coverage, but I also know you guys saw a few things that worried you going forward. Can you talk about that real quickly?
Yeah, early in the game, I thought that the way that the Eagles secondary is playing, especially the cornerbacks pressing, I actually think that was a very good thing to see. And I think it kind of threw the Broncos off of their game. But now, having said that, the Saints have seen it now, so they're going to be prepared for it. And so, I think for me personally, I think Steven Nelson has to step up a little bit better in the pass coverage game, especially in press coverage. He was kind of getting, taken for a ride a little bit. So, hopefully he can, continue to get better. And then the middle of the field, Avonte Maddox is playing great at nickel. He's where he's supposed to be. So I expect, going into this game, if I'm Sean Payton, I'm going to attack Steven Nelson. I'm going to attack Wilson. I'm going to attack the safeties and over the middle of the field. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully they continue to stay aggressive in defense and change it up and press coverage, play off, jump some routes, because that's really what you have to do to be successful in this league.
The Saints are never a team that you can just count out, even with their injuries, which they have some, but because of what Sean Payton and their defensive coordinator, Dennis Allen, they're always seemingly a dangerous team. You feel that way?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you have a program that's been successful like this for so long, for the Saints, as the Saints program organization, it's kind of built in you, right? It's kind of on autopilot at that point. So they're always in every game. They're always, one play away from getting into a game or winning a game. And so, that coupled with some very good, talented players on both sides of the ball, they're always a threat. And so, we can't take anything lightly. The Eagles can't take anything lightly this week. And even though they're down a few guys, it's always a possibility.
All right. So with that being said, how do you see this game unfolding today?
Another tough one, man. I feel like every time I pick one way, it goes the other way. So let me see. Let me think about this for a second. We're at home. We haven't won. I just feel that this might be the week for a home win. Let's go for it, right? So let's say I got the Eagles winning at home in a pretty high scoring game. Let's say 34-28.
Wow. That would be an exciting, interesting game. All right. Quentin Michael predicting the Eagles' home losing streak to end, and it ends today. That is Q's Views with former Eagles Pro Bowl safety Quentin Michael. Thanks, Q.
Thank you.
All right, great stuff there from former Eagles Pro Bowl safety Quentin Michael, as always. And, of course, you can catch the Q&A show with Quentin Michael and Jason Avant on the Inside the Birds platform. It drops Thursday, 6 a.m. every week. Jay, people are mad that you guys are Thursday morning. We can't satisfy
want another
anyone.
show.
They want
Yeah.
you like immediately.
Right.
Yeah, they want you guys Monday, Tuesday. We're doing the best we can here.
Yeah, we're doing the best
Yeah,
we
you
can.
guys got jobs. You guys,
Yeah, I'll be at launch on Sunday, like after the game.
Exactly. All right, our friends Public Square and Rebel Hill are back. The teams of James and Zach are behind the controls, bringing Inside the Birds to you in high definition with great graphics, videos, and more. Contact Public Square Media and Rebel Hill Productions to produce your webcast, podcast, live show, or anything else you can dream of. This team can bring it to life. That's our good friends Zach and James there at Public Square and Rebel Hill Productions. All right, real quick, a question from YouTube, which I think is a really good question, from Josh F. What should the Eagles do with Brandon Brooks if he comes back from IR? Because now you've got this offensive line functioning well. That is an Adam question. What do they do?
Well, look, we've talked about this before in that. You know he's not going to be here next year based on his contract. It's hard to imagine he would be back with the same contract.
Right.
We've seen there are a couple things have happened that we weren't sure that would happen. Jack Driscoll, a lot of people did not think he could play guard. He has. It's been a good story. You're not taking Landon Dickerson out of the lineup. That's pretty much it. It's just a matter of are you going to get Driscoll out of there?
Right.
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
Mr. Kaplan, here's my question.
Yes, sir.
Do they see Dickerson down the road as a left guard or as the center to replace Kelsey?
It's funny you should say that. Jeff and
The
I
answer
checked
is
into
yes.
this.
The answer is yes.
No. But here's the question. They came in thinking that they were going to move Isaac Seumalo to center. Well, we'd asked someone who would know, and they said no. They've not made that decision. To answer your question.
Correct.
Because they know both guys could do either center or guard. But that's a good problem to have. The good thing about all that's happened to their offensive line, despite all their injuries, they're down both their starting guards. And I don't want to say they haven't missed a beat, but you guys are watching the tape.
Yeah.
They haven't.
Would
They
you say
played well.
that all season, or has it been better lately?
Dickerson is a really good run blocker.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny that, and I think you would agree with this, Jason. I think the way they're playing offense actually also fits their O-line. It's easy to say, a team should run the ball.
Yeah.
Well, your O-line has to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I think Dickerson is at this point in his career, we'll see where his career goes, but he is clearly a much better run block. Pass protection he's got some issues with. And they're not a drop-back pass team.
Right.
So he doesn't get exposed very often in pass protection.
Does he look healthy to you? Landon
Yeah, that's
Dickerson?
tough for me to know.
Okay, but he looks like he's moving okay.
Yeah.
I've always felt it was more advantageous of them. I mean, look, they can go either way. When you have talent, you have talent. But for me, when you have a road grader like Landon Dickerson, who can be situated next to an enormous man like Jordan Mailata, and you have Isaac Seumalo, who projected coming out of college as a center and who tends to be, when healthy, pretty fleet of foot. I mean, he can move around.
He's a pretty good athlete,
I
yeah.
always felt like it would be to their advantage to have Seumalo be the center. You can run a lot of sweeps. You can run outside zone. You can run your screens with him there, just like they do with Kelsey a lot, and then keep Dickerson at left guard and Mailata at left tackle.
This brand of football is fun for all offensive linemen.
Yep.
I would be surprised if Kelsey is going anytime soon.
Yeah.
I was going to bring that up because they
point.
they would have to redo his deal.
Yeah. Big time.
If he wants to come back, but
How old is Kelsey now?
Kelsey's
33?
33.
Yeah, he still can play another 2-3 years.
Right.
And with this style, like I said, it's fun for him. This is
Actually-
a fun thing to do for an offensive lineman.
Just turned 34.
Well, I don't know about
Wow, he's that old?
But if he's still, he just turned that in, earlier this month. But here's the question: if you say the tape looks good,
gaining weight kind of helps him a little bit always. But
Hey, if it looks good, I mean, look, Whitworth for the left tackle for the Rams.
He's
When
40.
he's healthy, he's
40,
playing all right,
yeah.
right? He's 40 years old. Yeah. It was one thing with Jason Peters, who was starting to really regress year after year and get hurt a
all
lot,
the
and you
time.
could see the drop off in the play. But if you don't see a drop off in
Well,
the play,
Kelsey's not getting hurt. That's the thing.
right?
I mean,
well, he plays through a lot.
Right, yeah.
lot of
He
stuff.
does play
Yeah,
through a
he's
lot.
played through a lot of stuff.
Yeah. But you also have not seen a big time regression. Would you say you've seen a regression in
and
this
certainly
play?
not the way they're playing now. Yeah.
Kelsey's always going to struggle in one area. When they go 5 down and they put the the guy right in front
Right
of
in front.
him, and they isolate him, and he's a bigger guy.
Right.
Every team knows that
Zero
that's his
technique,
weakness.
yeah.
Right.
Well,
Everyone
but I
knows
will
that's
say
his
this:
weakness.
I've noticed a lot, and I'm sure you have as well. Is Kelsey looks very athletic this year?
Yeah.
I mean, there have been a lot of plays where he's gotten out, either on the perimeter or in the screen game, where he really is moving well.
That's his strength.
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm saying is there hasn't been a decline in that area.
Right. You would think that would
Right.
start to elude him as he gets
Right.
older.
I mean, he was not a power center to begin with.
Right,
Yeah.
right. All right, we are in hour 2 of Inside the Birds pregame live. Still plenty of time to get down here to Rivers Casino and Sportsbook, place a wager. The line for the game, we'll talk about that. I'm very surprised by. It's moved a little bit, but I'm still surprised given all the injuries on the Saints at what it is. We'll talk about that when we break down the game score and give our predictions. But they've got great TVs here, a wonderful atmosphere to come watch the Eagles game. Last week when we left, it was like the mass, what's the opposite of a mass exodus? It was the mass entrance of all these people with Eagles jerseys. Everybody was coming in and they were taking advantage of the great sportsbook that they got here at Rivers. Now, it's hard to believe. We mentioned this earlier. It's been almost a year since the Eagles' last win at the Link. And, of course, it came against the same team that they're playing today, and that's the Saints. But the Eagles have lost all 4 home games this year, 5 going back to last year. And, Jason, I wanted to ask you this because we were talking about it during the break there. It's hard to believe. I mean, this used to be a place to play where people, even when the Eagles weren't great, people used to fear coming into the Link or the Vet back in those days for different reasons. But it's kind of lost its, it feels like teams don't come here and they're afraid. They're not afraid anymore. Is that just because the team's not that good?
I think I don't know. This is like, I don't know the answer to this. I don't know. This year in particular, our team hasn't played, extremely well at home besides the Chargers game.
Right.
But there is, and maybe maybe offensively late in a Tampa Bay game, but they haven't played well. And once you start to create any type of pattern, it's hard to get out of. Cleveland, has been losers for a long time, and it's kind of hard for them to get out of that rut. Detroit and so on and so forth.
Sure.
You don't want to create a history over the last few years of not winning home games, and it seems like there's some mental things that are going on here. I don't know.
It's got to be shocking for you. I mean, growing
up
up, I mean,
well,
yeah.
the Vet, it's funny, as you guys were talking, I thought about the Vet, how it actually would move. When it was sold out and the Eagles were competitive, could be maybe a Dallas game where you just go, you can't hear yourself.
Right.
I'm not saying that the Link isn't good. It's a beautiful stadium, but here's a crazy stat. I mean, it's not like they've played a lot of 1 o'clock games over the last couple seasons. They've not won a 1 o'clock home game since November 3rd, 2019. They're 0-5-1 over that time.
That is crazy.
I mean, it's only 6 games, but still, you got to start winning your home games. Now, part of it is what you're saying. Look, the last 2 years they haven't been very good overall.
Right.
That's part of it.
Right.
Mike Tannenbaum told us when we asked him this on Inside the Birds TV. Mike said that part of the thing that he's noticing, and I don't know if he was talking about being at games. He doesn't think because of the COVID issue, the stadiums are as loud. Maybe that's it. Because, by the way, up to last week, I think through week 9, the away teams had a better record than the home teams this season.
That's almost
happen.
inconceivable in this league that away teams have a better record than home teams.
Can't see that.
That is probably the biggest reverse trend I've seen in the league in quite a while. Yeah. So just food for thought. Very hard to believe.
Certain stadiums, the fans have like a pact among each other to try to like break the decibel record. Like that's Seattle,
Kansas City, Seattle,
Like, so they come in knowing that they're going to be a difference if the game is close. I don't necessarily know. I love our fans, very passionate fans.
Yeah.
I love our fans, but I don't think that's the mentality of the fans in Philadelphia.
I think the Philadelphia fan feels a little bit like above having to like register a decibel. Like, this is Philadelphia. That's just how they are.
Yeah.
They don't need to set some kind of record.
Yeah.
I think that
Like,
they feel like that's kind of like gimmicky.
Yeah, but that's like more. But listen, it definitely helps. When you go to the Northwest, all the toughest games I've ever had has always been in the Northwest. I don't know what it is in college and in the pros. They just get louder.
Okay.
And so.
Interesting.
You told us during the break, though, that you liked being on the road a lot. What did you get out of playing on the road?
I like being the guy that know. I like the underdog energy, like that. Like being the one that's the underdog. We don't supposed to, make. It's just a natural motivator.
Just to win,
yes,
right?
Everyone's
Everyone's
a natural motivator.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I like that, and I like. There's nothing more satisfying than hearing a quiet stadium when you've caught like the game-winning third down.
You shut them down.
Third there, and you're like, oh, I want to hear it now. Let's go. There's nothing better than that.
That's why Philly loves you, Jason Abbott. All right, not only are they playing the Eagles today, playing the last team that they wound up beating at home, but the situations at quarterback for the team they're playing sort of similar. It's a backup. Last year, it was Taysom Hill filling in for Drew Brees. This year, it is Trevor Simeon filling in for Jameis Winston, who's out for the year with an ACL injury. I think Simeon's been fairly impressive so far. I know they've lost their last 2 games by 2 points in each game. He took over for Jameis Winston against the defending Super Bowl champ Buccaneers, and he threw for 159 yards and a touchdown. They won that game, and then they've lost their last 2. But you notice, Greg, and I think you said this while we were chatting earlier, he's not turning the ball over, Trevor Simeon. He's doing what he's supposed to do on offense, and I think he only has 1 lost fumble and no interceptions since he took over.
I think everybody knows what Trevor Simeon is. It's not a mystery. He's an executor. He's a ball distributor. He needs the route concepts in the system to work to present him with the throws. In that context, he can execute. He needs a run game, which they've not really had in his 2 starts at all.
Right.
I mean, if you go back to the Atlanta game, okay, he actually played his 4th quarter. If that was a quarterback that we always talk about, if that was a Patrick Mahomes or a quarterback like that, if you look at his 4th quarter in the Atlanta game, he led 3. They were down 24-6 in the 4th quarter, and he led 3 touchdown drives. And of course, they lost because Patterson beat Lattimore and set up that game-winning field goal.
Right. Yeah.
But he led 3 touchdown drives in the 4th quarter. Okay, he was 11 for 15 on those 3 drives.
Right.
And then last week, he also played well down the stretch. So there's not a mystery to what he is. He needs to be protected, which is a question today because of their O-line. He's not a second reaction player. He's not going to make plays outside of structure. I wouldn't call him a statue, but he's not going to really make the kinds of plays that break a defense.
Right.
You can line. Let's put it this way.
can win with
if you have pieces, you can line up and play with Trevor Simeon and be fine.
If I'm not mistaken,
I agree with that. And you got to give Sean Payton a lot of
Oh,
credit.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
we
You got to
are.
give him a lot of credit.
We will.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about him. But if I'm not mistaken, you were talking about the Atlanta game, but last week they were down by 8. He threw a touchdown with about a minute to go.
He did.
And then his 2-point conversion, I think the Ingram on a wheel route was just a hair off.
And he
or
made a
else that's
couple of
tie
really
game.
good throws in outside voids versus zone. I mean, he made NFL throws.
Right.
Now, he doesn't have a power arm. He doesn't have a gun. But his arm's okay. I mean, he can make throws.
He's going to play for a long time.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, you're exactly right. He's a guy that, if he wants to, he'll play 12, 15
Dare I mention the Nick Foles comparison? Just a guy who can play for a long time and come in and be a good backup. And I'm not trying to make a physical. I'm just talking
he's a
about
different player.
Yeah. But the ability to come in and move the
Nick
chains.
has a little bit more ability to get hot. If Nick gets hot, he's hot.
I would say
league best hot.
I would say Simeon's more consistent.
I was about to say, wouldn't you also? Yes. Yeah.
You know what?
Foles could get colder than
One of
Simeon
the
ever
issues,
will.
again, this is not a Nick Foles conversation, but I think one of the reasons Nick has become what he is because he's one of those guys that you just don't know what you're going to get all the time. Whereas Simeon, you kind of know what you're going to get.
I think the coaches who've worked with Nick Foles will tell you that.
Would agree.
Yes.
No question.
Yeah.
Oh no. I've had those same conversations, Adam,
Yeah.
as you've had. Whereas Simeon, see the thing. Look, you know this. The thing about coaches is when they game plan, they want the game plan executed as best as it can be. They understand there's going to be certain plays the defense wins. Everybody knows that. But other than that, they want the offense to be executed the way it's drawn up. And Simeon, he's that guy. He will do that.
Now, when you mentioned that he's the type of guy you can win with when you got the pieces around him, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Well, you've got no left tackle. Well, you have a backup left tackle, a backup right tackle, no Alvin Kamara, no Michael Thomas, and yet they didn't have Kamara last week, and he was able to do all right. But if you're Jonathan Gannon today, are you forcing the issue and taking chances, or are you just sitting back and saying, I'm going to wait for this guy to try to beat me with nothing?
No, I think the new Jonathan Gannon has to be aggressive like he has been the first series. First series this past game against the Broncos, the cornerbacks are in people's face and pressing, so you have to do that, and you got to be willing to throw blitzes at this guy.
Right.
And especially with hurt offensive linemen, definitely you have to blitz and hopefully you can get home. The other thing I'll say is that they have to be able to watch Deontay Harris. That's the guy that scares the hell out of you now. So he does, because if he's lined up in a stack or in a slot or in a reduced split, they're going to take a shot, and he's faster than everybody in our secondary.
Yes.
And
shot play guy.
Yeah, he's a shot play guy.
I would agree with what Jason said, and I think that was noticeable watching the tape last week. You saw the Eagles corners playing with a little more. It wasn't necessarily more man coverage in terms of a much higher percentage.
Sure.
But it was just they were playing tighter.
Right.
And I think that's really important. But their blitz percentage has gone up a little bit, each week. And I would do that because I think you have to look at the Saints receivers. I think there aren't really, other than Harris,
Yeah,
they don't really have a guy who's going to run by you. Now, I happen to like Marquez Callaway. I watched his tape coming out of Tennessee. I thought he could play in the NFL. As a certain kind of player. He's big, physical, he's competitive. He's got a little more juice than you might think, but he's not a true vertical guy, but he can, depending on the play call and the route.
Traquan Smith got him 4 years ago in 2018.
Yeah.
Sidney Jones grabbing his hamstring down the sideline. I could still see it.
But I think...
Well, he had like 2 touchdowns that game.
Yeah,
Traquan Smith.
Everybody had a touchdown. Keith Kirkwood had a touchdown against the Eagles that day.
I'll tell you, the interesting guy, and he's active this week, is he not? He's not hurt.
Juwan Johnson?
Yeah, I find him to be fascinating. He was a wide receiver at Penn State and at Oregon. They made him into, because Sean Payton likes tight ends who can run the vertical seam. And because Johnson was a wide receiver, he can run the vertical seam. And he's been in and out of the lineup due to injury, but he's flashed when he's played. And he can make certain kinds of catches that I'll be very interested, particularly with the Eagles linebackers, to see if he's a factor, because we know Sean Payton's really good at attacking the defense he's playing against.
Once he's healthy and he understands the position, he's still growing into it. But I remember I had him training him when he was in high school because he's a Glassboro kid.
I was going to say he's a South Jersey kid.
Yeah, he's a Glassboro kid, and I remember training him. I was like, man, this kid has a bunch of talent. But his brother played in the NFL. He was like a defensive end, so I knew that he had the ability to blow up. So I didn't know if he would be able to. It was like Eugene Johnson or something like that. Played for the Vikings. He was like a defensive end. So I knew his body type that I saw is like it's not going to stay that way. You know, and he can put on weight, and he's panning out as a tight end.
And Sean's always, as I said, he wants tight ends. He doesn't just see tight ends as guys who are going to catch 8-yard balls. He likes tight ends to be able to run vertically.
Awesome. Now, I want to ask you a little bit more about the Eagles' style of defense. But first, we're getting another special delivery, as we normally do at this time of the week. We're about to say hello to our friend Ron, who works the bar here.
Jersey,
there he is.
Dawkins Classic.
So gets his ginger ale. Love it.
You got a bold prediction for today's game, Ron?
We need our first home win.
Exactly. I was just going to say, Eagles
We were just talking about that. We need a home win.
Thank you.
Smash mouth football.
All right.
You know what? That's worked lately, hasn't it?
Heavy dose to the run. Stick with it.
See, Ron knows.
They do. And a couple turnovers maybe, and we walk out of it.
We like that. We like that.
Come on now.
Appreciate it. Ron, I'm going to have you sit here next week and just say the same things. All right, you're part of the show now.
Philly
As long as
loves
you
the
bring us
running game.
drinks.
They
we
love
don't
it.
need Kaplan. You can take that spot.
Hey, hey, Doc him some pay for that.
I'll try. How do you dock 0 from 0? But anyway. All right, a big thanks to Ron from Jack's Bar and Grill.
From nothing.
Please something.
Yeah.
Right.
And actually, Billy Preston winning the
Very
Hall
nice.
of Fame this year.
There you go.
Just thought I'd throw that out.
Thank you.
So I wanted to, Adam, we have a really good question from YouTube about Steven Nelson and his future with the team. But before I ask it to you, we need some context based on what Jason and Greg observed last week.
This is fun on Q&A.
Jay, you were this close to just outing yourself as the biggest hypocrite in the world and everybody else because you almost said, you like everybody else has been saying, these cornerbacks got to play tighter, got to play press. They're losing games because they're giving up too much cushion. Then you watched the tape of the Broncos game and you saw Steven Nelson probably almost get beat a half a dozen times, but Teddy Bridgewater couldn't see him get the ball, and you almost said, well, maybe they shouldn't be playing so much.
I almost said, but it's just that he has to, you know what it is, when you've been playing off so much and you've been accustomed to this, I just thought that his hips were extremely tight. He was locked in positions at time where there were simple jab steps that a receiver did, and it looked like he was going to fall out of there. You know, so it looked pretty bad on tape. Hopefully he can correct that, and I just think that's just more reps. So I don't want to go back that bad.
You don't want to put more into it? Like that might have been the reason he was available in May and June?
I don't know. But this tape does it. This tape against the Broncos, a few of those plays were as bad as it gets for a corner and press. He has to play better than that.
Yeah. Now, is he the good? You're Sean Payton. He's a master.
Yes.
I mean, Deontay Harris versus
Yes.
Steven Nelson sort of scares me today.
Yes. Like, so if that's the case, but you got to know situationally, Deontay Harris is not going to be a guy that can line up on the outside and just run past you.
Okay.
You got to know that he's going to be tucked away in the slot or somewhere like that,
Gonna be
motion
motion.
where you have to back out and you have to know to stay on top of that
Lamar.
guy.
All right, we got inactives.
The inactive, one surprise, we said, well, I thought maybe they'll keep 4 active. They're not. Kenny Gainwell is inactive. That's a surprise.
That is a big surprise to me.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a surprise.
Surprising, but I kind of said that on the podcast. I thought
Okay.
he might be the guy to really sit
So
down.
they're going to stay with the rotation when obviously Sanders is back in the lineup. But Reed Sinnett, inactive, so they'll trust 2 quarterbacks. Kerry Vincent, Tay Gowan, 2 corners are down. And Marlon Tuipulotu is also inactive.
There you go. All right, so
A quick question,
Yeah.
totally unrelated.
Yeah.
Have you talked to anybody about the Gowan kid who they got in the Ertz trade?
Yeah, he's got good size.
He's got really good
I
size.
feel like he needs a lot of coaching.
he needs an off season.
Yeah, an off-season
he
to-
probably will not contribute this season.
Because teams like big corners. You know,
They do.
Yeah.
They would rather have big. I mean, that's just the reality. Everybody would like big as opposed to
6
small.
feet. Right. Sure.
What the Eagles have done at cornerback this year is sort of like what they were doing at wide receiver, the old dart throwing. We're going to take a lot of guys who are either low round picks or, have good physical traits and see if 1 or 2 of them they can hit on. Where you're talking about Gowan, you're talking about even starting with the trade for Josiah Scott last offseason.
He's
Kerry
not a big guy,
Vincent.
though.
No,
Probably
they've
not
done
a
that
slot
at
guy.
slot and outside as well.
But a lot of slot
Mac
corners.
McCain, who's not with the
Right.
team, but they had took a chance on him as well. But I want to get back to Steve Nelson because Adam Ron K asks, should the Eagles bring Steve Nelson back next year? And he notes that he doesn't seem to have the speed to play outside. We talked about this on the podcast when they signed him. Some teams viewed him as more of a slot corner. They felt that he was too stiff for the outside. They liked his physical, scrappy play. But he signed a 1-year deal. You've got Zach
not a lot of
McPherson.
money.
Not a lot of money. You have Zach McPherson waiting in the wings. And you also, as we just mentioned, they've brought in a lot of cornerbacks. So I'm not sure if he's someone that they view as being a part of their future.
Yeah, I mean, he's only 28, but Zach McPherson's got to get a chance at some point to play on the outside.
Right.
That's really what his future is going to be now that Maddox got his extension. That kind of sews that situation up. And that's a position, quite frankly, I mean, I know Slay's had a very good year. He certainly will be back next year by contract. He has to be. But they need to get younger. You need to have 4 outside corners.
Yes.
They need
only have
corners.
2.
I also
They only have 2 guys. They only have 2 guys you can put in.
Yeah.
I also think when you look at the Eagles having 3 first-round picks, it's hard not to think that one of those guys, if the value matches the slot, is not going to be a cornerback. So you're talking about you've got Slay under contract for a couple of years, he's having a good year. You've got now Maddox under contract.
And he's your slot corner.
right.
So there's
And you've got McPherson, who you drafted last year in the 4th round, and you're probably going to use a pretty high pick this coming draft on a first round.
Well, we're going to
on a
find out.
cornerback.
We're going to find out in the draft what they think of McPherson. I'm not saying they wouldn't draft a corner, but it depends on who it is and where they draft him. If
Right.
they end up going for a corner, let's say in the 1st round, let's say they get 3 first-round picks and they take a first-round corner, then they're telling you what they think of McPherson. We don't have to guess at that point. They're telling
They don't
you.
see him as a
Yeah.
starter.
If they
Right.
don't, if
Right.
they don't take a corner till the 3rd or 4th round, whether we agree with that or not is irrelevant. But they're telling you then that they like McPherson and think he could be a starter.
And safety. It's another one.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the corner who's playing well for them right now, and that's Darius Slay. He had the fumble recovery for a touchdown last week. I thought what was more impressive was his explanation of it. I don't know if you guys heard him in the press conference, but he said at the time he scooped the ball, he remembered that the Broncos had come out in 13 personnel. And by the way, he says it a lot more colorfully than I did. He basically said there's a bunch of fat guys on the field, and I think I can outrun all of them, so I'm going to sit there and run.
Funny as that. He's hilarious.
He's smart. He's
Call him
smart.
Slay, though. Don't call him Darius.
Slay,
Doesn't
I
like
should
that.
just say Slay, right? Doesn't like to be called Darius.
What does he want to be called?
Because
Slay.
they,
Just Slay.
Just
Really?
Slay.
Like
Yeah.
Madonna or Prince. He's Slay.
Oh, he's a one-name guy?
Yeah, he's a
he
one
is.
name.
Wow.
One Slay.
Yeah,
he
for now.
got to get them dancing with the stars first.
But he's had a good year this year. I think that's after
Very
last year
good.
there
He's
was
a good
concerns.
corner. I don't think there was a question about
Well,
that.
I think after last year, and it was very notable the games they had against Devontae and Metcalf, who just happened to be very good wide receivers, and he was on a bad team last year. They stood out for the fans.
Yeah,
and
but
people wondered.
I think to me, watching corners is like talking about quarterbacks interceptions. You got to watch the plays.
Right.
Because someone could say, and again, I'm not making a direct comparison, but it's like the Devonta Smith touchdown we spoke about last week. Someone could say, well, Surtain got beat. Well, you got to see the play.
It was right there.
Surtain didn't get beat. It was just a great play. You know, you got to see the plays before you just look at numbers on a sheet when it comes to corners.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And he's having having a nice year here. I think he's one of a few players who have 2 interceptions and 2 recoveries for a touchdown this year. So,
But I mean, there's no problem with Slay. I won't say Darius. with Slay at corner.
yeah, I don't think you know this, Greg, but in he does a weekly press conference, and sometimes a reporter will accidentally say, "Hey, Darius," and before that reporter he cuts Slay, and it just goes Slay. And then the person, it has to be like, oh, I'm sorry, Slay.
Right.
Yeah.
Who was the 49ers safety? Dante Whitner, he wanted to be called Hittner.
Right.
Because the way he played.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That was my recruit at Michigan.
Dante Whitner.
Really?
You did a bad job.
I knew he wasn't coming. I told the coach the first day, I was like, this kid's not coming. Somebody made him come here.
How could you tell?
Somebody said, he was
just angry. He never smiled. It was like he loathed the fact of being there. You know, he just hated it.
Well, you know, it's funny talking about Michigan. I was thinking when we were talking about.
So I used to try to knock his head off every time we played against him.
I was thinking when we were talking about Jordan Howard earlier that one of the games that really helped him, you know, as a draft player was he gained 200 yards against Michigan. Remember that game?
Yeah, I remember that game.
Did Indiana win that game? I think they lost.
No, I believe in it. Was one of the one times I think. No, they lost it.
They lost the game, but he had 200 yards rushing against Michigan.
Yeah.
Why don't you stick a knife in his back while you're at it?
I don't know why that just popped into my head, but it did.
Oh, that's funny. All right, I wanted to get back to talking about Sean Payton because when I look at the matchup today and I talk about the Saints offense and I say this so favors the Eagles defense because of what the Saints are missing, I always do come back to the fact that I think Sean Payton's pretty brilliant of a head coach.
I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah, pretty clear. He's got a lot of wins. In fact, he's 4th on the list of wins for active head coaches. So you're talking about Bill Belichick, Andy Reid, and I believe he and Pete Carroll both have 148 career wins. So he enters this week tied with Pete Carroll for 5th. There's probably somebody else that I missed on that list.
Tomlin got to be in there.
Who?
Tomlin got to be.
Tomlin is
150, actually.
You're right. Tomlin's 4th at 150, and then Pete Carroll is tied with Sean Payton at 148. When you think of what Sean Payton does best, you think what? What makes him a great head coach?
It's for both.
I would just say that he develops the quarterback position extremely well. And now you have Drew Brees, and you can say, hey, Drew Brees is Drew Brees. But Drew Brees wasn't Drew Brees until Sean was there. You know, he had a good season his last season with the Chargers, and then they moved on to Phillip Rivers, but Drew Brees turned into a Hall of Fame player under him. And then his replacements, we've seen Taysom Hill win games, we see Jameis Winston win games. They're always in football games. And he does a great job with offense and developing quarterbacks and all the receivers that he's had, from Lance Moore to Marcus Colston, Callaway. All of these guys have produced numbers. Traquan Smith have produced numbers.
Right.
And so you have to give him a lot of credit for it. And,
and a lot of those guys I mentioned, a lot of them were not first-round picks or second-round picks.
It was one time where Robert Meacham, who was
Tennessee.
It was one year where his completion percentage was something outrageous.
And
it was like
90%.
It was like 90% completion percentage.
Right.
Like those things.
That was
are
the year they
scheme.
went to the Super Bowl, by the way.
Yeah, by the way.
I remember doing the Super Bowl show on site with Jaworski, and we did a little thing on Robert Meacham. That was the year. I would answer that this way. I think, because from watching tape, I try to, I think about it tactically. I would say that he has a phenomenal understanding of how to build, compose, manufacture, orchestrate an offense based on the personnel that he has. In other words, obviously every coach has certain staples. That's just built in. Every coach has certain staples. We know that. But I think his understanding of how to use players, whether it's more motion, whether it's formations, whether it's receiver distribution and location, whatever, all the details and nuances of offense, I think he has such a great feel for that based on the particular skill sets of his players.
Right.
And that seems obvious. But it's not, as you know.
Oh, sure.
But it's not.
I think that's a.
Does that make sense to you?
Yes, a great point Greg just said, and I'll give you the perfect player because Darren Sproles in Chargers, Darren Sproles
So
in the
funny. I've
Saints.
made that point.
yes.
Yeah, I've made
Oh
that
my
point before.
gosh,
Yes.
it's different because he changed the game on, okay, let me use Jimmy Graham and let me use Darren Sproles first, and he changed the complete complexion of the NFL with using those guys, and everybody started to adopt that after those guys.
And look at Graham. He left New Orleans, and
Not the same
Graham is
player.
kind of,
Yeah.
I don't want to say he's just a guy. I don't like to talk
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But he certainly hasn't had the production that
Right.
he had when he was in New Orleans. When it looked like he was going to be that tight end that was
Yep.
going to change the game.
Right.
Usage of personnel. Taysom Hill's a perfect example,
Yeah.
okay? A guy that had been hurt in college at BYU. The Packers didn't know what to do with him. At 29 years old, they make him a quarterback slash fullback slash running back.
But,
Great
but
use
like
of
I said,
personnel.
it seems obvious when, and I tried to, I hope I said it clearly, but it seems obvious, but it's in terms of the execution of it, it's not.
Yeah.
Because not everybody does it.
doesn't do it well.
Why is he so crusty, Adam? Have you ever met Sean? He's
I
for
know
an offensive guy, he's pretty
Yeah,
crusty.
I know Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's his deal?
He's got a little Belichick in him, and then if you press him hard enough, he actually could give you something really, really good.
Well,
Yeah.
it was funny about 4 or 5 years ago, and I've known him for. I met Sean when he was an assistant with the Eagles. It was Gruden, Sean Payton, Ray Rhodes, that staff.
Guess what?
Bill Callahan.
Yep.
That's
he
when
still
I
has a house in Ocean City.
Yeah, those guys came to NFL Films, and I gave him a tour, and
Cool.
so that's when I met all those guys. So I've known Sean. I don't have his number necessarily, but I remember about 4 or 5 years ago at the Combine, I was standing talking to whoever I was talking to, and he comes right up to me and he says, "Hey, if you get a chance, do you mind just sending me your quarterback evaluations? I want to discuss the quarterbacks in the draft with you." And so I sent it, and we ended up having a really good conversation. I forget which draft it was.
Did he
now.
then hang up on you?
He didn't hang up on me.
Really?
No.
Okay. There you go. You're in the club.
I'm in the club.
Tell me, how do you get in that club? That's pretty rare club. No,
I'd
that's,
say this that he's a butthole at times.
Oh,
Like,
well,
yeah, it's especially when it comes, and it's a good thing because some coordinators won't constantly attack the weak link.
Right.
He will.
Yeah.
Like he will find a weak link and exploit and make sure that you never play another down again.
Yeah.
Right?
And the thing about Sean is he coaches. And then, you know this. Some players, when you're in the NFL, particularly veterans, they don't want to be really coached.
Right.
He coaches hard.
He
Yeah.
coaches.
yes.
And look, it's easy for me to say I'm not an NFL player, but I think that's kind of what the job is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, right?
Yeah, some coaches feel like the NFL player should know.
Right, right.
And so they just skip it. And like, he should know that.
Right.
No.
Right.
You coach
You-
over and over again.
You guys may recall that to Jason's point about finding that weakness and needling at it.
Yeah.
When they kicked the crap out of the Eagles a few years ago, I think it was 2019, right? Malcolm Jenkins was still on the Eagles. And he went after Malcolm when the game was already out of hand.
right.
And Malcolm gave him the middle
No, I
finger.
remember that.
After the play.
That was the deep touchdown to Kamara
Yes.
late in the game. Remember that? He lined up
Malcolm-
Kamara out
Malcolm
wide,
flipped him
and
the
he
bird.
beat Jenkins.
Because you knew it was on purpose.
Exactly. That's right.
Yes.
One more note. Juwan Johnson is inactive today.
He's inactive.
Oh,
wow.
God.
Yeah.
I mean, is anybody playing for the
Wait,
Saints?
we'll take it.
Is that an injury inactive?
No, he's healthy.
That's,
that's
interesting.
He's
then.
healthy last week, too.
So Troutman and who else?
Adam Troutman's our Y tight end.
Right, but who's the other tight
I mean,
end?
Nick Vanetta's back. as
Nick-
their Y tight
oh,
end.
okay.
He'll be their Y.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll be
Okay.
their Y.
Literally the only reason
Juwan Johnson
Yeah.
in Philly, right?
I will not predict the Eagles to win by 20 today is because of Sean Payton. Because any other
Exactly.
coach,
Exactly.
most other coach, not any, if it was Andy Reid, yeah, but most other coaches bringing this offense into the link, I say would have no shot. But again,
He's
Sean
going to
Payton is a
manufacture
different
some
breed.
points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, we mentioned Malcolm Jenkins. He does return to the link second time in 2 years. However, there were no fans in the stands last year, so there was not really an ability for the Eagle fan to connect with Malcolm last year like they will this year. And he's how do you think Malcolm's playing for the Saints?
It's funny. Last year, I thought he got off to a really bad start. It was his first year in New
Yeah.
Orleans. I thought
Yeah.
he did not play well through the first 6 or 7 games, but then I thought he settled in. I think, I haven't studied him, so I don't want to make it sound like I've charted every player or anything like that. I don't think he's a liability. I don't think he's great anymore. I don't think he's a dominant type safety, but he's not a liability. That's the way I again, without studying every play.
Well,
Yeah, last 2 games, I would agree with that. He's not the guy that you can just line up and he was the better athlete against
Right.
the tight ends. He's not that guy
No,
anymore.
no.
Right.
But he's solid and he's going to be in position.
Right.
Well, you guys remember Adam especially, the biggest issue with letting a franchise icon like Brian Dawkins go was not only the backlash at the time, but then the inability to replace him with a solid player. And Malcolm Jenkins has now gone 2 years, and the Eagles have tried. And Rodney McLeod's not a bad player at all, but he's certainly not a game-changing safety.
Yeah.
Anthony Harris has been beat up, and I think that it's fair to say he's just been okay. And they can't get Kevon Wallace on the field other than to block field goal, which was very important, but that's not why he was
you
picked
made a
in the
really
fourth round.
important point, you know, which I think sometimes a lot of people lose sight of. You got to line someone up. So, you know, a lot of times people say, and this is the reverse of what you're saying, where people say, oh, we got to get rid of that guy.
Right.
Well, that's fine, but you got to line someone up.
Who are you going to have to replace?
Right. Who are you going to line up instead?
Right.
You got to line someone up.
What do you remember about, you didn't coach him, but just being an assistant position coach last year, did anything stick out about you about Kevon Wallace? Did you think that it was going to be difficult for him?
He was a mentee, because we had certain guys that I had, but Connor Barnes doing a good job of like assigning, former players or coaches that played the game with a few players. He was one of the guys that I had. So I thought, great kid, number one, or a great young man. I think that he's still learning to play the position in the NFL. Like he doesn't attack enough. And he waits a little bit when it comes to being aggressive in the hole and things of that nature. And I don't necessarily know if it bodes well for the National Football League, but he's still growing and progressing. He will get there because he has that want to and desire. So hopefully they can stick with him long enough, and I think that they'll get a player out of him eventually.
The crazy thing about Kevon Wallace, in the context of the draft, was that draft for the Eagles was especially known for guys who were very, very twitchy at their position. Even Jack Driscoll, who was drafted the same round, ran a fast 40 time for an offensive lineman. Yeah. But that was the one pick where it seemed like the twitch, the analytics, the measurables were not necessarily as prioritized. Yeah. They loved his toughness at Clemson. And I was just told even this past week, they thought he was a very physical, tough player, but that has not translated yet. Now deep into his second year at this
level.
Here's
the thing with that. It's funny you mentioned this because remember, the guy they were going to take, if they didn't take Jalen Hurts, was Jeremy Chin. We put that on our first post-draft show. Is like what we were hearing is, have they not made the trade up for Hurts? He was analytically, he matched the numbers.
Right.
And it's a guy that they all agreed with would be their next great safety. They thought he could be in time. Now, no one knew it would be this good. And certainly he was a tremendous athlete. It's just funny you mentioned the analytic part of it, and they take a guy who didn't match that.
Right.
And he's had trouble getting on the field. I know he's had some injuries.
Right.
So that's yet another position they have to address next season in a big way.
So usually a guy like Kevon Wallace would be playing early, because when you take a guy like Kevon who's mentally savvy in college, tough, he knows how to play the game, but he doesn't meet the measurables of the NFL, those guys usually play like faster than a guy that grows into a potential. So that's the only thing that kind of worries me a little bit.
Right. Speaking of playing faster, how does Davion Taylor looking to you now that he's starting to get more time?
I'm very
also
pleased.
From that draft.
I'm very pleased with his progression. He's starting to realize and recognize defense. He closes fast. And I thought the Broncos recognized that last week. There was a few times that he was in the flat faster than heaven got the news. And, and it was very good to see.
Thank you, by the way, for the Ernie Sims flashbacks on the last Q&A. Those were
Ernie Sims.
Shark in the water. Who asked that question? Did Sean McDermott? Yours truly.
That was you?
I totally regret it. Yeah, I do. I just had heard, with the Lions that he could make a lot of plays.
Right.
I didn't realize he missed most of the plays.
You guys are struggling to remember the player that poor Ernie Sims was taking all his aggression out on the camp. It was Eldra Buckley.
I was going to say, he would knock out his own team.
He would knock Eldra Buckley out. I mean, poor Eldra should have had the red penny on him by the end. He should have been treated like a quarterback. He was getting hit so much.
He's coaching in college football, Ernie Sims.
Is he? Oh, Ernie?
Where do you know?
I don't know. I just know he's coaching as assistant.
Does Davion, as we wrap this up, though, because he's still coming into his own, I do feel like this is the guy that Sean Payton looks at and says, I see a lot of athleticism.
Oh, okay.
I also see he's not always in place in the passing game, and that's an area where I probably can find a good mismatch.
In general, that's good for our linebackers.
Kamara was there. Yeah.
In general, that's a good thing. Like, remember, he's one of the guys that have made the running back like a premier pass catcher with Darren Sproles and other guys. So we can be exploited in that area anytime.
All right, what are you thinking about the safeties group? Anthony Harris is an injury. He's got the thumbs thing that he's playing through, and nobody knows how he got injured thumbs. And he had the groin injury. When he's out there, does it? Because I know you guys were breaking it down, and Quentin Michaels said something like, "I don't want to speculate, but he doesn't look like he's completely 100% the way he's playing out there."
He's
but he's just a guy, right?
There's nothing that's special. Like, I just have to say that it's
you're
not
right.
like it's special. And for me, I don't necessarily know why the younger player Epps isn't playing, because there's nothing that he's doing that's warranting him staying on the field over a younger player with more potential. So that's just me.
You have to like how Marcus Epps has played in his snaps.
I think
correct?
Marcus Epps has showed up on tape.
Yeah.
I think he again, I hate saying this, it's a cliche, but I think he makes some plays. You see him on tape.
Right.
Harris was an interesting guy because he came out of UVA probably 8 or 9 years ago by now, and either he was undrafted or he was a late round pick. Was he undrafted?
Yeah.
And he weighed about 183 pounds, 185 pounds. He was a very productive college player, but no one really saw him as a starting player.
Right.
And then he had a couple of years in Minnesota one year in particular, where he seemed to be around the ball a lot.
He had 9 picks.
He had 6 picks, I think it was, or something like that.
But I would say for the most part, he was not really viewed as a true big-time starting safety.
Right. They gave him the franchise tag after, and that kind of inflated, I think, the public perception of him.
Because he fit the scheme that Mike Zimmer played, and he had production within the system, and he was playing with Harrison Smith, who's a pretty good player and a very versatile safety.
Very.
So
Sendejo was there at the time as well.
And Sendejo's one of those guys early in his career who's not a bad player.
Right.
He's going to play 12 years in the league for sure.
Always.
And he's playing for the Colts right now, right?
He's a because they have 2 injuries. He's starting.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think Harris is. You can line him up, but I think you want to be better.
Yeah.
I would think so too. It's just it strikes me as sort of interesting that the 2 upgrades to the defense through free agency this year, because of their familiarity with the scheme, were Eric Wilson and Anthony Harris. You've got one guy who's not even on the team anymore, and another guy who I wouldn't be surprised if he continues to lose his snaps to a player who is already here.
Yeah.
Just interesting stuff.
Yeah.
All right, check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of Philadelphia sports teams for the fan, by the fan. That's their motto. Check out their Twitter account at PHLSportsNation, or just head to their website, PHLSportsNation.com. Now we get to do what we do best here, where we pick our players of the game, and we pick the score. Of course, before we get into that, if you want to get an advantage over your sportsbook, you've got to download BetQL. It's the only app you'll need to make smart bets. They've got a best bet computer model that scans over 350,000 unique bets a year to give you the best bet recommendation for every game across all sports, and gives you the reason why you should place the bet. Their model covers everything from spreads to over-unders, player prop bets. And if you don't want to use the model, if you like to do the research yourself, BetQL's got the necessary tools for your betting research needs, from sharp data to line movement, team summaries, injury and lineup breaking news, even a leaderboard to track your success. So head to the App Store or Google Play Store now to download BetQL. You can also go to the website betql.co/ITB, enter the promo code or discount code ITB at payment checkout, and you'll get 25% off your subscription. And if you live in one of the eligible states to claim their sportsbook offers, you'll get a free offer upon signing up at one of the many sportsbooks listed. So don't miss out on the chance to beat your sportsbook this football season using BetQL. All right, well, let's go find out who's going to be the player of the game. Jason, I want to start with you, because I think that this was some second-level thinking here based on what we talked today. Your player of the game is?
It's Quez Watkins.
Because of that number 2 wideout thing?
Yeah, Paulson and Debo, one-on-one, Jalen Hurts a lot. I think it'll be three shots down the field, and also the nickel. If they do play Rager outside and he goes in the nickel, they haven't covered the nickel well.
Right. Hey, that's
or
second-level
not nickel,
thinking.
but the nickel receiver.
Right.
Or third receiver.
Is that train of thought why it might have taken until about 10 minutes before the show started for you to give me who your player of the game was going to be?
Yeah, it's always like that. I usually watch film a little bit late.
Yeah, well, Public Square and Rubble Hill, they appreciate you. As they scramble last minute to get the graphics down. No, good stuff on Quez Watkins. Greg, who is your player of the game?
I believe I picked Jalen Hurts, did I not?
You are correct. No senior moment. Good job.
Although I do have a few of those, Jeff.
We all do.
Yeah.
Why so?
You know, I don't know exactly how the Eagles will come out today based on what they've done in recent weeks, but I think their offense is developing a feel and a rhythm to it. Okay, now, we don't know how this game's going to play out, so I don't know if Hurts is going to have 20 dropbacks or 30 dropbacks. I think they prefer him to have 20, but I think the way they played last week really struck me, because I remember when I evaluated Hurts coming out, and Anna may remember this, in my transition, I said that I thought his career, if he was in the right place, could end up going one of two ways. He could become down the road a Dak Prescott type, or you could run him like a Lamar Jackson. And when I was watching last week's tape, I got the Lamar Jackson vibe. And I would sense they'll stay with that, and I think it'll be effective.
And when you say that, you mean establishing a run game to play his running off of
making your offense work with him as a foundation of the run game as well.
Right.
Even if he doesn't run the ball, it's how you use him to impact how the defense responds.
Makes sense. Adam, who is your player of the game today?
Well, I'm going to go back to last year's game when the Eagles D-line dominated. This was a game where they got after it. Their D-line got it done, and Javon Hargrave had 2 sacks, and Josh Sweat had 2 sacks. I know they were playing the wide 9 last year, but you mentioned the guys who were out. Ramczyk, this will be his second game of his career that he's missing, so that's a big deal for them. I like Josh Sweat to have a big game. Heck, I would use Javon Hargrave, but I'm taking Sweat this time.
Well, somebody else may have taken Javon Hargrave. We'll get to that in a second.
Right.
I want to go back to Josh Sweat. The defense has started to come back a little bit. You've seen a pass rush. I think he had a good game last week as far as beating his man, establishing some pressure, but we were really not still seeing, I think, what we expected to see yet. Is that still, you think, symptomatic of being in this new defense? Or?
Yes, 100% that is, because this kid, the tape looks good. Like if you talk to people who watch their tape, you go, he looks fine. Like he'll get a pressure, but he's not getting sacks because you're not getting upfield only on the wide 9. Your responsibilities are different here in this new defense, and it may not happen this season for any of these guys. Although we see Hargrave, as he was the first 5 games, maybe the best D tackle in football. Last week he was better. What I was told is the tape looked better than their stats would indicate. Their line did get after Denver's offensive line.
What do you guys think on the Josh Sweat production scale here?
Well, some of that is where he lines up.
Right.
You know, and that you have to take that into account.
Sure.
There's a lot of 5-man fronts where he's inside as a 4 technique, and that's not a pass rush position.
Right. But
you just want him to have freedom.
Right.
When you pay a guy that much, you want him to have a two-way go.
Right.
Do you see that opportunity for him then more on the second and long and third downs?
Yes.
And what are you seeing from him on those downs? Is the burst there in your opinion?
Yeah. I don't think there's a problem with Josh Sweat, the player.
Right.
You know, it's where he lines up. You know, most defensive ends do not line up in a 4-man D line, and this is a 5-man front for the most part.
Gotcha.
With Avery in there.
So Avery lines up on the ball, and Sweat is the one who moves inside as a 4 technique, and that is not conducive to rushing the quarterback.
No doubt about it.
Hands,
Yeah.
You get too many hands.
Really,
you get guys
it'd
chipping, throwing
be very
off
interesting
you,
to see what they do in the offseason and how they kind of rebuild their line philosophically on what they have on first down compared to what they are going to feature on, say, second and long and third down, and how they make that work. And that's kind of something I always thought that they should have maybe more considered going into this year based on what they thought they were going to be running. But
giving Sweat a contract like that, you would think that the front office and coaches are saying, okay, this is what we project over the next 3 to 4 years, but we haven't seen it yet with Sweat.
You got to see it. All right, well, I was along the same wavelength as you. If I'm going to sit here and talk about all that the Saints are missing on offense, especially on the line, I picked Javon Hargrave and think he's going to have I thought he had a pretty good game against the Broncos. I thought he collapsed the pocket a lot. I know he didn't have a sack, but I feel like Derek Barnett's sack came because of the pressure he created.
The Derek Barnett sack was a function of the TT stunt, which Hargrave created because he was the penetrator.
Right, exactly. So today it seems like a really good day for Javon Hargrave to, assert the whole defensive line, I think, to establish themselves against this Saints offense that's beat up. Yeah. They should win, but you can't put anything past the Saints. They're that good.
Or the Eagles. It's underachieved. They've too much underachieved. When it looks like they should dominate, they don't always do that. And then when you don't think they have a chance, they come out and win.
That is true.
Story of the Eagles season.
All right, Sundays are made for football at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. Every Sunday from now to the end of the season, you can enjoy $7 food specials right here in Jack's Bar and Grill. Maybe you'll get a nice drink from Ron. He'll serve you like he did for us. You can get half-price gourmet burgers at Hugo's Chop House, drink specials, and more. And not only that, but when the Birds score, you score if you're actively planning with their Rush Rewards card in their Bird's Nest pit in front of the sportsbook. So remember, you can be a winner at Rivers Casino in Philadelphia, where Philly loves a winner. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Now, guys, the line on this game is crazy. I went to betrivers.com earlier today, and I saw that the line had moved from about 2.5 to 3. So now the Eagles are 3-point home favorites. And it's kind of like what Adam said last week. Like, why are the Broncos only 2-point favorites at home, coming off that big win, facing a struggling Eagles team? I look at the Eagles are coming off the win. They're home. They're facing a Saints team that's lost 2 in a row and has all these injuries. 3 seems like the least that they could be, but I don't work for Vegas, so I don't know. I just thought that really stood out as interesting.
At? Was it Pick'em to open?
It opened up as a 1.
Okay.
As a
The
1.
Eagles were favorites.
And it's moved to 3 over time.
Money's coming on the Eagles, so they're trying to get the lot. They want the people to put. I understand how that works.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Some of that has to do with that, but either way, just surprising to me. But let's get with your picks. Jason, I'll start with you. Who's winning this game?
The Birds will win. I think I have 20-17.
Birds 2017.
Devontae Smith, the big challenge this week with Marshawn Lattimore. I'm looking forward to that matchup.
All right, Birds win. Close game.
Birds win. Yeah.
Low scoring game. The over/under on this, by the way, from Bet Rivers is 42. It moved from 44 to 42 in the last few days. So that's a low scoring game. Jason would go with the under. Craig, who's winning the game?
I think I had the Eagles 24-23. Did I?
Yeah. A little last second Jake Elliott field goal there.
I don't know.
Who knows?
Tight ball game though.
I don't know. You know, it all depended on when the coin came down on the desk. You know?
Gotcha.
But you like the Eagles, right? So you're picking the Eagles this week. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Adam, is it going to be 3 in a row here for the Eagles?
I've got it again. Yeah, 23-20 Birds. I just, with all the injuries, they'll find some ways to exploit them. But I just believe the Saints will find a way, because Sean Payton's such a good coach. He'll find a way to keep this close.
All right.
So I'm
3
just
in a row.
curious, before you make your pick, if they happen to win today, so is Nick Sirianni then not an idiot anymore?
You'll have to ask the people who have been saying
Fans.
he's
Oh,
an
okay.
idiot.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, I
We'll
don't know
address
those
that
people.
later.
I'm just curious how that works.
Maybe they won't focus on the city fumble or country fumble.
By the way, you know, Chip Kelly used that. Chip Kelly used that. People forget those comments.
Yeah.
I guess this apparently coaches know about the city fumble and country fumble.
By the way, if he loses today,
Then he'll be
is
an
he an
idiot.
idiot?
Yeah, of course.
I mean,
Against this
like
team
I said,
with
the Saints are
everyone
not
hurt.
bad.
Talk radio, man. That's what fuels it.
All right, well, I might be the village idiot after this game, because I'm actually predicting a fairly large Eagles win today. I am predicting the Eagles to win 27-17.
So you'll be the idiot.
I will be the village idiot. You can bring it on me, but I do think the Eagles will win. But I think it's going to be a pretty sizable win compared to everybody else. So that's a sweep. We all say Eagles win. Quentin Michael also with the Eagles win. Remember, before you put your money down on the Bet Rivers app or here at Rivers Casino in Philadelphia, get all the statistical trends and data at BetQL. They've got an interesting projection of the Eagles scoring 23 points and the Saints scoring 22.5. So perhaps they think that a tie is in store. And if you like to play the player props, the BetQL says go take your money and put it on a guy like Miles Sanders, 46 rushing yards, 20 receiving yards. Jalen Hurts, they project 260 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, along with 45 additional rushing yards. That's BetQL.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
All right. All right, thanks to BetQL. Thanks to Bet Rivers. Thanks to everybody involved. Ron for bringing us drinks. Public Square, BetQL, Rebel Hill. Everybody, make sure you subscribe to the Inside the Birds podcast. Our next one will drop at 6 a.m. on Monday. Head to InsideTheBirds.com immediately after the game. Check out our coverage. We'll be back again next Sunday. For Jason Avant, Greg Cosell, Adam Kaplan, I'm Jeff Mosher. Thanks for watching Inside the Birds pregame live. Have a great game. Enjoy it.